Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the podcast. Today's guest is Fraser Oliver. He's one of my best friends in the entire world. He lived in Lister the same time as I did. We didn't really know each other in our first or second years, but in third year he moved back in and we became quite close and then kind of hit it off. And ever since we've been thick as thieves. So this podcast might have a little less of a tangent throughout. We talk about his journey down to the States to do chiropractic medicine in California. Talked a little about sports, but this one's a little more loosey goosey, just kind of shooting the shit, having some fun, having some laughs, catching up with a buddy of mine. And that's kind of one of the directions I wanted to take this podcast and wanted to open it up to. I didn't want it to have to be serious every time and have a topic and a guest that's coming with an established agenda of things we want to go over, and just show people that can also just be a couple guys having fun. And I hope you guys enjoy this style too. It's a little bit different, a little more laid back, and I'm hoping that shows future guests that you don't have to come in here with a full 900 IQ agenda to wow the people. You can just come in and have some fun, just like Fraser did today. So I hope that still resonates with you guys and you still enjoy it. This is my first podcast that I'll be releasing, or I guess it's the first recording that I got to do after I've actually released the podcast itself and didn't have pre-recorded. So this is my first time to kind of thank everybody that's listened so far. The response has been great. I've been loving every second of this, and I just never in my wildest dreams I imagined I would get this much positive feedback this quickly. I kind of thought it would be a lot of maybe constructive criticism for the first bit, but everybody's been really positive, and it's just made me so happy to see that, and really has fired me up to really jump into this and start doing it. Maybe starting to release maybe more than one episode a week, and really trying to get better really fast and bring it to that level that I know everybody is going to come to expect. You know, if I can keep getting better each time, it's going to really get to that level that I want it to be and that you guys want to hear. So I'm really excited, and I just can't say thank you enough to everyone that's reached out, everyone that's helped me out, everyone that has, done legwork to find guests for me, has reached out for me. It's been unimaginable, just the wave of generosity that I've seen so far. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like always, if you want to reach out and help in any way, you can reach me at VonDubCast@gmail.com, VonDubCast@gmail.com. If you have any guest ideas, any intro music for me eventually, anything like that, or if you just want to chat about this podcast, if you want to know how to run one yourself, I'm more than willing to help out, and that's where you can get a hold of me. So yeah, and sit back and enjoy this episode with Fraser Oliver. He's one of the most loyal and compassionate people I've ever met. If you ever need the shirt off his back, he'd be right there to give it to you. Another guy that comes from a northern community, and that sense of giving and caring is very evident in him. I didn't know he wouldn't be able to take these kind of compliments if I did on the podcast, so I figured I'd have to shoehorn it into the intro. But he is one of the most special people that I've had the pleasure of meeting. So I really hope that comes through on this podcast, and hope you guys enjoy. All right. Well, if you're ready, you're settled in.
Let's let it rip.
Fucking rights. All right. Welcome, everybody. Episode 6 of the podcast. Today, I've got one of my best friends that I met in university. His name's Fraser Oliver. We just got all settled in here, got our couple beers to catch up. We haven't seen each other in person probably a few years, but haven't talked to him even much with all the craziness going on. He was down in the States. So, yeah, I'm sure you'll get to know him here, and this won't be his only time on the podcast. So, welcome, Fraser Oliver.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. I just got to confirm one thing first. Can these guys see me, or is it like I don't want my ugly mug out there?
Well, I mean, not at this point. At this point, it's just purely an audio podcast. I'm trying to work on the video part, but I'm not even recording it on this one. I figured you wouldn't want your ugly mug out here anyway.
Yeah.
So some of the podcasts I've done so far, I just asked them if I could record the visual, and they didn't mind, so I did. Then later, if I can figure out how to do it, I'll try and patch them together and maybe release a visual podcast. But at this point, that's way beyond my abilities. So I'm just kind of rolling with the audio at this point and just seeing how that goes for the start.
Oh man, like this COVID break has been brutal. Like I left kind of school prepping, getting a summer body ready. And I had to, coming back into Canada, I had to do a 14-day quarantine. And I did it in a 1-bedroom apartment. And oh my God, that just set the stage for me. And now I'm cut like a milk bag, man.
Where did you have to quarantine?
Just one of Lorna's friends, my
Oh yeah,
girlfriend's friends, and yeah, it was a lot of just couching and just feeding, man. It's so easy to feed when
yeah.
you're steps from the kitchen and you're just playing Call of Duty or something all day.
That's hilarious. But was that like back in Yellowknife, or did you have to uh, isolate right when you go back into Canada? So for those of you that don't know, Fraser was doing school down in Oakland,
Just south of Oakland, a place called Hayward, California.
Hayward, right, right,
Yeah,
and you were doing physio down there. So when
chiropractic.
this chiropractic,
Yeah,
yeah, I know. Well, 'cause I got so many physios around me all over. All I got is physio. I'm just surrounded by it.
yeah.
So like, did they let you go all the way back up to Yellowknife, or did it right when you landed in wherever you landed first? Did you have to isolate there?
No, since if I wasn't leaving the airport, I was good to go straight home. But if I
Right.
was gonna have to overnight or something, if I left the airport, it started right there. So luckily, I could get through.
Oh, that's good. So and what? How long have you been back in Canada now?
Oh man, I think I got back early April.
Okay.
So April, May, June, 3 months.
Holy shit. But
Yeah.
you were down in the States for quite a while everything kicked off. So because at one point when I talked to you, it sounded like they were going to try and do school from there just online, but kind of keep you there in case they could bring you back. But when did that change? They kind of made the call that wasn't happening.
Well, it kind of turned like late in the. Sorry, it seemed like COVID back home here in Canada was kind of getting more attention than down there.
Right.
And it seemed like most people were kind of just brushing it off as like another flu.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like Stanford's going online, Cal Berkeley's going online, and then just like the dominoes fall. And we're
Yeah.
quite a bit smaller school than them, but once those started falling, I was like, oh my gosh, like here we go. And then the NBA went down and NHL went down. It's like, okay,
Oh,
I was certain we were going online. That was a tough day.
yeah.
And
Oh,
so, yeah, our school decided to go online. And actually, we're supposed to go back July 13th
what
for
were
like,
you doing when the NBA shut down?
oh man, I was just, we had just
Where were
gotten,
you when you got the news? Because I
oh,
remember exactly where I was.
yeah, we were just got home from school. I was sitting on my couch and man, I had gone to the Raptors Golden State game probably a week prior.
Oh.
And, and then we got the news and I was like, oh man, like gearing up for another Raptor playoff run. And it's like,
Mhm.
geez, man, just a kick to the balls. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it looks like we're going to have it back. So we'll have
Yeah,
something to
well,
look
they
forward
just
to.
looks like they just announced Toronto and Edmonton today as the hub cities for the NHL.
I know. I saw that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. Maybe by the time the finals come around, they'll let a select few into the building, watch a
Well,
couple of games.
well, they said that Edmonton's going to be the host for the cup. So we
That's what
might
I
have
heard.
to try and sneak into the bubble there and have a few drinks with the boys.
I'm trying not to be offended. Well, that's what I'm saying. I might have Connor on the podcast. Who knows? He might be next.
Hey,
You
shoot
know,
for the
just
stars, man.
sneak into that bubble. But that's what I was thinking. I don't even know where I was going with that, but no, that's I was trying not to be offended by them picking because they were saying talking all that shit about we really don't want the team in the finals to have a home barn advantage, so they pretty much put it in Edmonton because they figure, well, they're not going to win it. We don't have
Yeah.
much issue there.
Yeah. I don't think we have to worry about that one, bud.
Yeah. Oh
I
man.
well, even if it was in Toronto, I'm a Leafs fan, but I don't really like their chances. So.
Yeah. Neither of us can get too offended by that. That's funny. So how was school? How long are you doing it for now? How many semesters have you done there? Because that school is a little different than the typical semester, right? It does four a year.
Yeah, so typically in Canada, you do your fall semester and you do your winter semester,
Right.
and then you kind of get a summer break. But for us, we've got 4 quarters, and so they're each 11 weeks long, and you get you're basically going year round. Like I get 3 weeks for summer break and 2 weeks at Christmas. But other than that, like in between my quarters, I get a week off, and you're right back at it. So it's a little bit more high pace, but I don't mind it. It's a little bit shorter than a full semester. It's about a month shorter, so you kind of zip through them quicker.
Right.
Through 6, so a year and a half, and I got another 2 years to go.
So 6 of 16.
6 of 14.
6 of 14,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so you're chugging along pretty good,
Yep.
almost
Yep.
halfway. So how have you been enjoying it so far?
Oh man, living in Cali's a blast. Like it's,
Oh, I bet.
you know what I mean? Like yeah, you're living in summer year round, so there's not that. Especially where I come from. I'm from Yellowknife, Northern Canada.
Yeah.
So, man, we got winter for almost 8 months of the year, and then you're digging in and you're hoping to
Mhm,
get a solid 2 months to 6 weeks
mhm.
of good summer weather. So, I'm really embracing that, and you can't complain.
At what point did you realize growing up that living in Yellowknife was kind of extreme? Like, because I remember being a kid in Slave Lake, and it wasn't a big deal. That's just where you grew up, but it's kind of a crazy place up north. And then Yellowknife is a whole another couple factors from there. That's way up there. Did you realize that as a kid, like I live in a kind of crazy place?
Um, Not so much growing up. It wasn't really until I hit U of A
That's the same thing with me.
because yeah, like we'd go to a few hockey tournaments a year, right? And you'd play teams, you'd meet guys, you'd tell them where you're from. But it was such a small sample size. You might meet like
Yeah.
10, let's say you talk to 10 other players, and then you come back and you kind of just forget about it. But when you're telling like that first day when you're meeting all your buddies on your floor and you're having beers with them and you're saying like, "Oh, I'm from Yellowknife," everyone's like, "Holy shit, you're from Yellowknife!" Like, is there any? I didn't know there was anyone up there. And this is people from Canada that are
Yeah.
like Western Canada, relatively close. The amount of times I've heard, "Oh yeah, you're from the Yukon." It's like, no,
Yeah.
cocksucker, I'm not.
It's all the knife.
Yeah,
That's
but
funny. As soon as you get
yeah,
as soon
so
as
it
you get
was
north to Edmonton, it's all the same to
e
everybody, hey?
exactly, yeah. So it was once I hit U of A and I realized like, oh man, like even kids in Canada don't understand like really what Yellowknife is
Mhm.
all about, and you kind of realize like, holy shit, man.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to get up there. We've been talking about road trips up that way, but sounds like your wedding might be the next time I'm up there. If I can't get up there sooner with all this craziness going on, but that's going to be a pretty fun road trip.
Oh yeah, that'll be sloppy. I'm a little bit worried about some of you Southern folk
Making it
coming
back.
up and not dragging your corpses back down to Alberta.
Yeah. Well, these northern Alberta boys will be fine. I'm worried about those Calgary kids trying to come up. They're going to hop on board
Yeah, fair
and
enough.
meet
Those
DP here.
city boys are a little bit softer
Yeah.
than the grit that they got up here. So
Yeah. So, well, speaking of the grit, so how did that feel going down to California with that Yellowknife grit on you? Quite the experience?
yeah, I mean it's a lot more like kind of posh and I don't know. There's a lot more like restrictions on just going to a
Yeah.
bar or something, man. Um, like things like no hats. You couldn't
No
wear.
hat.
You can't wear all white shirts. Like you can't wear anything with logos. And I think it's kind of the hats and the all white shirts might be a little bit more like gang affiliated.
Oh, that
But then
makes sense.
even like I had a couple buddies down to visit me, and we went out to a nightclub in San Fran, and he was wearing a Nike shirt. And like it's like for one, it's like at first it's like, come on, man, like what are you wearing that for? Like we're going out to a nice club, like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? We're gonna get
Got
turned
his
and
fresh
we're
Nike
gonna
on.
enjoy ourselves. And he's got a Just Do It shirt on. And so we're in line, and the bouncer comes up to him and says, like, yeah, you can't wear that in here. And he's like, what do you mean? Like it's just a t-shirt. And
Yeah.
he said no. And then my other buddy says to the bouncer, like, well, can he turn it inside out? And he's like, okay, fine, but you're gonna look like an idiot. And so
Yeah.
all night, this guy had like girls coming up to him saying like, because he's a good-looking guy, you know,
Yeah.
girls come up to him saying like, excuse me, like your t-shirt's inside out. And it's like, oh
Uh,
man, like you don't have a chance tonight if you're rolling around with an inside t-shirt,
no,
inside
no.
out t-shirt.
That serves him right for wearing a Just Do It shirt out to the bar, though.
Well, that's what
Really.
I'm saying, man. Like it's not your first rodeo. Like
Yeah.
we're 24 years old. Like you've been around, kind of figure it out,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, that's funny. Oh man. So then back to the schooling itself, is it kind of exactly what you thought it would be? I know a lot of the people I've had on the podcast so far. Not only I'm kind of curious just how it differs from Canadian schools. I'm sure it's going to be a lot different just because it goes from an undergrad to a graduate degree. It's going to be a little different, and like you say, different format on the semesters and stuff. But how do you like it so far? Are you really enjoying the schoolwork? I know you're enjoying California. That's a given, but
Oh, I'm loving the school. Yeah, it's a different it's just a different approach than from undergrad where you're I mean, let's face it, you can fake your way through an undergrad degree no problem.
easily,
You know what I mean?
easily.
Like you really don't have to go to class. You got to finish
Who
your
would do such a thing?
you got to finish your 2 or 3 assignments
Yeah,
of the semester for a class. You got to write your tests. You got to pass and you move on, right? That's
yeah.
really all it is. And you don't have to carry too much from one class to the next.
No,
And I just find with this class, with this schooling, for one, I had to become a better student. I wasn't the most dedicated. Um, I was more for undergrad for kind of the social aspect for
except for
sure.
Dino 101 when you had me in your class, then it
Except
was
for
pretty
except
tight
for
ship.
Dino 101, yeah, when me and Nick were on our way to become paleontologists.
Oh yeah. Hey,
Um,
we both had A pluses, I think, in that course.
yeah.
That was my one A+ of my entire university career.
No, man,
Was that Dino
I think I
101.
finished with a B plus. I was pretty rattled. I know you finished with an A plus, and I kind of fell off in the final, so I'm a little bit
Yeah.
rattled from that. But oh
They
well,
wouldn't let me do your final for you, like the
yeah,
midterm, but hey,
we move
it
on. But
works.
yeah, no, it's good. They kind of it's more of a practical approach, so you're kind of learning stuff that you're going to apply um, in your business. So
Yeah.
that's kind of just how it is, and they carry you along. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, there are a lot of kind of interesting folk in California for sure
Yeah.
that have different approaches to life, and that's fine. But you know, there's kind of that more hippie vibe for sure.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
you know, you just got to embrace it, man. Like we went, I know me and my roommate Matt, we went on a went to a party, and this girl comes out to us and hands us a handful of shrooms, and she's like, "Take these." And it was just like, "Yes, please." So we
Oh,
dove right in. It
California.
was such a that party was such a write off. The next 3 days were probably a write off for us. But yeah, no, it's just it's a different vibe down there for sure.
Do you see that in like your profs and stuff too? Are they pretty hippie too, or is it mostly just like the surrounding stuff?
Oh, it really is just like this a loud minority, you know, like so there's probably let's say like 15% of
Yeah,
that are kind of that hippie vibe, but they're so much louder than you know what I mean? They talk kind of their philosophy and whatnot way
right.
more than the average
Mhm.
person. So I want to say like, yeah, there's a handful of props. For the most part, there's fairly normal people, but
Yeah, you
there's
got your one or
definitely
two.
a couple space cadets out there for sure.
I'm sure you love those guys. So I guess one of the bigger questions I had about chiropractor, just from what I know of it, just because I don't know a lot about it, is kind of listening on podcasts and mainly Joe Rogan. He's kind of goes against it a lot of the times and kind of really espouses some only a couple points of it that kind of paints the picture that he likes to paint of it in kind of a negative light, but just because it was years ago and where it came from. Did they ever discuss the origins of chiropractor in the schooling and stuff, and kind of the craziness that it kind of sprouted out from? Not, I don't think it's that anymore, and I think it's come a long way and it has a lot of good science behind it. But I think that's stuff like him kind of perpetuating that. I just was curious, did they ever discuss that?
Well, yeah, but that's kind of the thing with any medicine, right? Like
Oh, for sure.
when you look at just like modern medicine and how much it's developed in the past 100 years
Hmm.
and stuff, when doctors are prescribing like cocaine for things, and
Yeah.
now we've progressed to other things, right? And what chiropractic really is just it's a non-invasive approach to um, non-invasive approach to just improving health and well-being. When you look
Right.
at when you look at the spine and what it is, it's a protective mechanism for your spinal cord,
Right.
and that's kind of like like your brain is your motherboard, and that's all
Yeah.
the wiring to your body, right?
Hmm.
So when things like that are in proper alignment, like that can really screw with your bodily functions. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So there's things like sensory defects, motor deficits, like stuff like that that we look to improve on and then maintain without really having to look at stuff like surgeries or even drugs. Man, like drugs have
Mhm.
pros and cons with everything you take, right?
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
And a lot and
Our body isn't meant to take in certain chemicals.
yeah, and the system set up around medicine when you talk about drugs and what's prescribed, all the incentives are very perverse, and it costs so much money. There's so much that goes into building these drugs that they have to make their money back, and it incentivizes health around a business in a very unhealthy way that can really throw things out of whack. Where there's definitely pros and cons with the painkillers and stuff that are being handed out like candy these days, and they are fill a very important role in our society, but they also hurt a lot. And I think that's a huge monumentous goal for just culture as a whole to work away from that in any way that right, whether that's chiro, whether that's physio, whether it's other these things, is to move away from those is a huge admirable goal.
Exactly, and when you look at kind of the setup of like pharmaceuticals in the United States, like it's a multi-billion-dollar industry,
Mhm.
and you know doctors are paid by companies to prescribe their drugs. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So there's
Yep.
also that kind of moral issues with stuff like that. It's well, do you really need that, or are you just having that? When you look at like just the average adult in the United States, they're on like multiple medications, and most of them or many of them have contradictions to each other,
Hmm.
and it's so there is a dangerous aspect to that, and I think that definitely gets overlooked by it's just the capitalist market that
Yeah.
you know.
And it's unfortunate because you see now there's proof coming out that some of these companies that are putting out like opiates and stuff, they know there's going to be blowback and they knew what they're doing, but they think if we're going to get fined or sued for $500,000, but we made 3 billion, Who
gives a
cares,
shit?
right? They're calculating it into their profit margin, just like Harvey Weinstein was calculating his sexual abuse into his contract. You know, one instance is this much money, two instances, right? They know what's happening. How is that possible? But they just,
Exactly.
it's so, like I say, it's so, the incentives have been so skewed towards money and away from health that these things pop up. And like you just said earlier, they're sending these doctors out to nice dinners, taking them out to, you know, just to prescribe their version of a heart medication over someone else's. There's so much money involved in that. And it's just kind of a runaway train where how do we get back? And I think for a long time, what was different was you didn't hear about those things. You'd never hear about that, you know, 20 years ago, unless you were somehow around the medical field and would be in touch with the doctor that said they got taken out for some. You wouldn't hear about that. But now it's kind of starting to come crashing down. I'm very curious to what they say in the next coming years, because it's one thing to make an excuse about the opioids, like you say, where you're calculating it in, but now we know that, and your taxes have been found out once. Now you go and try and play that again, or your next drug you come out with that has a huge negative externality to the public, and then you come out and just try and, you know, make so much money off it that you have it calculated in like that. I wonder if there's going to be more public outcry now that it's way more public and these things are coming out, you know, these days with Twitter and all these places where people can just make their voices heard, whistleblowers, all these opportunities where you can anonymously bring these things to light. I wonder how they're going to change and what kind of things. I mean, it'd be great if the world came together to try and fight those on a day-to-day basis, but I think even without that, and I think we should be doing that, like you say, with Cairo trying to pull things away from it. But I wonder just with if no one goes against it, if just the change of the way the world is going is going to kind of deteriorate that on its own.
Well, it's kind of hard, right? Because when the average person talks to their family physician or emergency room doctor or something, you're generally believing everything they say.
100%.
You
And
think
that's
you
what we've
think
been
that
taught to do.
you think that your best interests they're holding number one, right? When it's not necessarily truly like that. So what chiropractic kind of does is we bring just like a very non-invasive approach where it's low risk, high reward, and our job is not to replace MDs. Our job is to work kind of hand in hand with them.
Right.
You know, so when we see something that's not really in our scope, we can refer out.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I'm just taking my sweater off real quick. One second.
Yeah, no worries, dude.
Oh, beautiful. A
So
little
yeah,
sweaty in this little office.
but when a hard thing that kind of the chiropractic industry has to deal with is that a lot of MDs don't take us seriously, and
No.
different international chiropractic associations have been kind of butting heads with the American Medical Association for years.
Right.
We'll have to get maybe another time and talk about just the origin of chiropractic and
Yeah.
how chiropractors in the early 1900s were getting arrested for
Mhm.
practicing medicine without a license, and how it was kind of running rampant in the United States until we won a trial against the AMA stating that chiropractic was separate from MDs, and you know was its own kind of legislation and its own
Right.
licensing.
Yeah,
But
its own rule
yeah,
set.
it's I mean, the science has come a long way
Mhm.
in a long time, and honestly, we help a lot of people. So
Yeah, no,
if you ever
exactly.
have any issues, whether it's wellness or just injury or stuff like that, like go see a chiro. I
Mhm.
guarantee they'll find something that's wrong with you and fix it. And you know, I wasn't necessarily under a ton of chiropractic care. It was always just, oh, I got hurt in hockey, went and saw a local chiropractor. You know, I might see him 3, 4 times. He helped me a lot, and then I'd be kind of going back to that. But
Mhm.
as a student, when you first get to school, you're under care from an upperclassman,
Mhm.
and so I usually will get adjusted 1 to 2 times a week. And man, like I can just, now that I've been at home and I just haven't had that access, you can just really feel like certain postures and stuff are just like kind of breaking down for me.
You
And
mean to tell me you're not adjusting yourself? Come on, Fraser.
I mean, it's hard to do.
Couple
Uh,
times a day, I'm
man,
sure.
the amount of times I roll out now is just trying to relieve like a spasm or something. Oh
Yeah.
man, and just our society in general, we have such terrible posture now with the invention of the iPhone and stuff, and everyone's just
Mhm.
glued to that thing. And hand up, I can be glued to my phone for quite a bit
Mhm.
too. But yeah, like it's just that when you're kind of hunched over, like we're upright beings, right? So when we're
Yeah.
hunched over and just staring at that thing, your neck's flexed forward, like it just messes with so much. And it's just honestly, the chiropractic adjustment is super simple, and I know it's everyone's like super intimidated because of the crack, and they're like, oh my
Yeah.
god, like that's my neck, or that's my spine or whatever. And
Yeah.
honestly, like I can get that, but I whenever I'm kind of messing around with my buddies at home and I'm adjusting them, it's always after they're always like, wow, like that was so much less like force and stuff that I thought it was, and
Yeah.
it's no pain. It's just it's done like that, and then you kind of feel those effects for the next week or so, and you're like, wow, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and not that I was going against it. I have a lot more faith, and I think than lots of people around me in the medical field of what it can do and what has changed to be. And I think one of the biggest things I think is against it is a platform like Joe Rogan that is crazy huge at this point. You know, somebody goes on from particular anonymity, goes on once and is giant star overnight, that kind of thing. And for him, every time chiropractor comes up, all he talks about is the first guy that invented it and what a crook he was. He was a magician, and his son killed him over something and took over the family business. But it's like, to me, I agree with you. It's come a long way since then, you know, just in you know, body manipulation alone. If you take out the specific field, whether it's chiro, whether it's physio, just our knowledge of what we can do and how we can adjust the body has come so far since those days. I think it does a real detriment to it as a whole, right? And every once in a while he will I think at the start he would say, I'm just saying that with take it with a grain of salt. I know body manipulation does a lot for the thing, but it seems like nowadays he doesn't. And I just wonder if in the school they talk about the impact that it has, because I feel like that would be a very tough current to swim against when such a big part of the, you know, the 2020 cultural zeitgeist in such a big form is so against it. I feel like that'd be really hard to go against. I feel like it'd be a disservice to you guys to not at least realize what you're up against and, you know, plan and talk about it and learn in school that history too, so you can combat it and say, oh, well, you might have heard this, but this is, you know, like you said, it changed at this time with this change of the law when we got our own board and our own thing. I think that's really important to bring forward, and I hope that in the school they kind of understand that and don't just hope that people figure it out.
Yeah, and I think as the science evolved, kind of we understood like what we're doing as chiropractors, and so there's always going to be people who make kind of claims that aren't necessarily supported by science, and those are
Right.
kind of the, I guess, the odd or the minority that kind of hold the profession back a bit. But
Hmm.
no, I think the
Right.
science is really starting to support what we do, and you just got to keep evolving, right? Like as
Yeah.
I'm sure my philosophy and practice when I first open up is going to be a lot different than the last year I work. So you know,
Yeah.
it's just you just got to always be learning and advance the profession that way.
Mhm. And I think that is a huge key point, especially for. I think this is a key point for everything in society these days. But just how fast everything's moving forward, constantly learning and staying at the top of your game, right? And not taking one person's view of it. You know, I think we fall into a trap a lot of times because we look at someone with a lot of years of experience in a field, and that is a double edged sword. You know, if you do things the right way and you keep learning your whole career and you stay abreast of what the newest things are, that's great to have that experience. But if you're hard nosed or you fall out of love with the profession, I know on me and Courtney's podcast, we talked about compassion fatigue. I think it's a huge part of it where you fall out of love with the profession, you stop learning with it. And then not only people look to you because they think you have all this experience in it, but you're not teaching and bringing forward the latest and greatest in the field and actually hurting it, like you say, because there's probably some, you know, some chiros, some, and I think that there's some doctors out there that are really teaching, you know, the food pyramid, you know, you need 12 servings of bread every day and stuff. That's just absolutely bananas, but it's no one's fault. It's just what we were taught and misinformation that we had at the time. But we have to be free to move forward with that and not take these old thoughts as what's going to be brought forward in the future. You have to be looking at the latest and greatest of what's something bringing to the world.
Well, you look at just kind of, I guess, in today's society, like it's never been higher of how much we question the government. You know what I mean? Where you
Mhm.
look at, you know, back in, I don't know, 50 years ago, that it's kind of like what the government says is true, and they'd
Mhm.
never lie to you, right? They always have your best interests involved. And you kind of look behind the scenes and you look at
Right.
how much money is coming in from these like multi-billion dollar industries and corporations that are pumping
Mhm.
money into the government to get kind of their message across that benefits them. And
Mhm.
I think that's kind of starting to come to light in the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years. But
Mhm.
Before, it's kind of like whatever the government says, people don't question,
Yeah, and I think that is a huge swing, and I think we're in the middle of it right now of trying to see the adaptation of. There's all these um, systems set up and in place using that old system, like you say, where nobody questions anything and nobody's really going to dig into it. So we have the freedom to lie and put out whatever we want. But now there's so much fact checking. You can't just you have to come with some facts these days, right? And if you don't, you're going to get caught out. You might be able to, you know, run it for a little while or get away with it for a small bit, and everything's set up for that, right? If you go on just mainstream news and stuff, everything's so such short clips and stuff that they have it set up particularly so that you don't get found out. That's how they have their whole basis set up. Because if you talk about the opioid crisis on the news, they bring on 4 experts, 2 from one side, 2 from the other, for a 5-minute discussion. They can't really talk to each other, but that's set
Yeah.
up that way so that you don't. But now that people are going away from that and moving into these new longer form things with, if like the Jeffrey Epstein thing, that would have been nothing 20 years ago because no one would have looked into it, right? The story was the latest thing, and now there's all these people that can come out and give little pieces of the story here and there that all add up into a way broader picture.
Yeah.
And they still try and, you know, use whatever powers they can to wash away those powers, and they don't want people to be able to do that. They have all these things coming out. They change the story, they change the autopsies, they change all those things because they don't want to. But it's all just a shadow of them trying to hold on to the power systems that they have, because they're gonna, try and adapt to it once they realize they don't have any other choice. But right now they're just trying to see, well, what's the farthest we can push this, what's the most we can lie to them and not get caught. And they're really in the middle of it. I think we're in a really transformative time right now, because I think we're seeing the people wake up to the fact that they can question it, and that it's there are people out there that are doing the work for them, and you don't have to go doing all these digging on some of these subjects. There's people that will do that digging for you if you can trust them. And uh, you can go in after, find these people that you trust, listen to them on a lot of facts, and then they can do that work, and you can be an educated citizen in a completely different way than you could before. Because the only way to be an what do they call that, whatever citizen, an upstanding citizen, was to listen to your news and stay abreast of this and vote. That was the 2 things you could do. Now
Yeah.
there's all these million different ways you can say an educated citizen. But what I find interesting is how many of these people that are willing to do that work go in, do the digging on what's really going on, and then put that out on somewhere like Twitter or somewhere like YouTube, where people can find it freely. And how quickly they are to jump on them and try and label them all these things and turn them down so people can hear them, because that's another just another aspect of them trying to hold on to what they have, right? They don't want people coming out and finding out all these things about the pharmaceutical industries. That'd be terrible for them, for people to find out that they're actually budgeting into their costs the lawsuits that they're going to take from the detriment they know is going to bring on, right? They don't want that to get out. So anybody that's starting to do that work, they shout them down, they call them conspiracy theorists, they do all these things. And
Exactly.
but I think it's starting to crack. I think more and more you're starting to see that shift, where for a while they were keeping them down, but now you're putting on another layer when you try and lie about these people that are doing the work and doing honest and trying to find these things. It only goes so far, because then once you get caught again, not only were you lying about the real story, but now you're lying about the people trying to tell the truth. Now you
Exactly.
lose all credibility. And I think that's what we're starting to see, and that's the real shift right now. It's that second level of questioning, where I think there was always a bit of questioning, right? And I think maybe that's where we're looking at it wrong. Back in the day, nobody questioned. I think there were people questioning, but what could you do?
Well,
You only had the story.
we've never had a bigger platform as an individual to
Mhm.
get our story out, right?
Yeah.
Like, me or you are, in the grand scheme of things, are nobodies, but if we can jump on a movement, like a movement on Twitter, or you know what I mean, like,
Yeah.
and you can see it now with the all the protests that are going on in the world today. People are kind of
Mhm.
realizing that united as one, we can kind of have a bigger impact
Mhm.
than just a lone individual. Because if me and you scream and shout, nothing's going to happen, right? But if you kind of
Exactly.
all get together, and also to the transmission of news has never been like more at your fingertips, right? So social
Mhm.
media has its pros and cons, but um,
Yeah.
you've never been more empowered as a human today than ever
Exactly.
before.
And I think that scares a lot of people, that that empowerment is coming. I think they're doing things to try and hijack a lot of those movements and take them away and try and make them seem more violent. I think you see that all over the place, where they're so scared of people being able, and the power that you can see with people standing up and coming together, that now they start to you know, they'll go break some windows themselves to try and turn it violent, or they'll, you know, coerce the movement into their own thing. Like a lot of the things you're seeing now with some of these movements have been completely co-opted by these people that aren't even sending the right message. And now we're damaging what they're trying to do. There's this awesome fight that needs to be had, and there's change that needs to be had, but then they jump on it and put their own spin on it of things that nobody's really fighting for, that aren't important, that muddy the message. And I think that's another aspect of them, that last minute clawing of, they see everything kind of falling down around them, but this is their one last thing, instead of trying to adjust with the times and be honest and realize we can't just keep hiding this stuff, but this is their one last tactic. Well, okay, we don't want to change over yet. We're still making we're still sitting pretty nicely with the things set up how they are. Let's see if we can claw this out, and maybe instead of, acquiescing that, yeah, we need to change, well, maybe we can just make these riots a little violent and shut them down and get a few more months of, the status quo and the hamster wheel, how everything's running. And I think that's what we got to, stay vigilant to and not let, because I think it's they're very good at it, and it's very easy to take something that seems like a good cause that everybody's on and twist it just a little bit to make it turn people on it on purpose, right? So that they're starting to attack it. Now everybody's fighting again. Now we're not moving forward with the movement, right? We have big moments of unity. They do all these little things to try and split everything back up and get people fighting again. And then we're back to it, right? And that's what scares me is a lot, is just seeing people so obviously wool pulled over their eyes of, now everybody's fighting again, when we had that great moment, everyone was on the right path. We were starting to, see a couple ways forward that would actually bring some really good change. And then it turns back to the old narratives of what we were fighting about before. And it seems very clear with people bringing things to light of how they're doing this purposely to make things happen and to stifle some of the changes coming forward. And I think that's, but like I said, I don't want to be too cynical on it, because I think that's changing. I think more and more you're seeing voices coming out and saying exactly what I just said and calling out the bullshit of, no, don't listen to these guys trying to divide us all and make us fight. We were on the right track. That's what they're trying to do. Let's keep the message on brand. This is what we need, and this is what we're going to move forward. And I think that is what we see. So you were already, yeah,
I gotta piss.
okay, I'll mark it down. That's what I said. Let me know. All right, perfect. Well, I think I've pretty much crushed that subject on every podcast so far. It keeps bringing me back to it because I'm so passionate about it. But what I want to talk to you about more was, school and back into sports. So which sport do you think you're missing the most?
Yeah. It's got to be, it's got to be hockey. It's got to be the NHL. Yeah, I think, I'm a big NFL, NHL guy, and
yeah,
I know the NFL will be back, but I'm missing hockey. Nothing better than hockey playoffs. The cup final in June just gets you going. Nothing gets you hornier than a nice Saturday night playoff game.
Yeah.
I know the Leafs haven't had much success in the past years, but you're anxious. You're anxious the whole time. Like the game, if there's a game that night, you're just sitting at home and you're just like stewing about like what is going to happen. Like, I don't know. I think I'm more of a pessimistic guy when it comes to hockey, and it's almost like a relief. It's a relief when they're out, because it's like, okay, I can just enjoy the games now, and I can just forget about it. I know my team is garbage, and we can just move on.
Yeah, and that's what I found. I don't know why I was so surprised by this, by what I'm going to say next, because it seems obvious. But I didn't realize how much I would miss sports. When it went down, I was really upset right at the start, but I didn't think it'd be that big of a deal. But the coming weeks, like you say, of not having that something to look forward to and get excited about. And why I'm saying I don't know why I was surprised like that, because you're right. When hockey's around, I get so unreasonable around hockey. I like to think of myself as pretty reasonable most times, don't get too high or low, pretty reasonable, can take things on. But when the Oilers are playing, I lose all of that. I am a sassy little bitch when it comes on. I'm pouting, I'm freaking out, I'm ecstatic. And I think that you don't realize how much of emotional variability that brings into your life and brings the highs and lows. And that's what sports are, right? It's
peaks and valleys, man. It's peaks and valleys. And one minute you think your team is winning the cup, and then they lose 2 in a row, and you're thinking, oh my God, like, how do I cheer for this team?
Yeah.
And it's just like that. And I don't know what it is. I'm cursed, man. I know I'm cursed. My teams always lose or let me down in the worst ways. And it's just, you're not yourself it takes you 2 or 3 days just to recover from like a tough loss.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the NFL, because when they get a win, they play once a week. So they get a win and you're riding high for a week. But if they lose, like, I remember watching the Vikings play with my old man growing up, and like, if they lost, he was grumpy until Wednesday. And he
Yeah.
was grumpy until Wednesday until like he realized, okay, we got another game this Sunday. Okay, like need a win here or something. But it's like just stay out of his way for 3 or 4 days and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And that was something that I feel like my growing up, we didn't have football in Slave Lake, but I kind of liked it from afar and kind of knew enough about it just being a sports fan. But when I went to university with you and started watching the Vikings with you and getting slowly indoctrinated into the Vikings nation here, as I so thoroughly am now, but I just found that I didn't ever realize the relationship was so strong between like the understanding and how much you love a sport. Because when I knew football to like enough that I could watch a game and I can explain football to somebody else, know most of the rules, but that next level from there to really understanding the nuances of it was what put me to where I love football now, and it's awesome and I love watching them. And also I think that was having a team to attach to like the Vikings, because I always said I liked the Texans before and I don't even know where that came from. I think it was just Texas and football. I figured that was like the home base.
That's a loser franchise to cheer for, man. Those guys don't win shit.
Yeah, but I still got a little soft spot in them just because they were my
I
one.
feel it.
Yeah, yeah. But that was what I realized was once I realized that, and where I saw it more so was basketball, because that was something where I understood the sport as I thought I knew, to maybe the level that I knew football before, but I knew nothing compared to football or hockey when I came to basketball. Right, the last 5 minutes when you and Chase explained that to me in university, you know, all the ins and outs of what they're doing, why they're fouling, that made my level of enjoyment go up. That, and I found a podcast that is awesome and about basketball. For the majority, they do lots of comedy stuff too, but it's called Flagrant 2, and they really got into the nuance that right before I think the Raptors run was right when I got into it, and I was really understanding it. And that level you can say of understanding maybe 85% of a sport to 100 is game changing in terms of your enjoyment, right? Like that was so amazing for me to roll over to, of just something that has been there all along, this sport that you've peripherally watched, you know, watch the highlights of for 15 years, and then you change one thing over a 2-week span and now it's a whole new sport to you. And it just made me think of how much other sports I just don't give their due, you know, cricket, soccer, you know, those ones that you just don't I bet that if we really dove into it and understood it
Sure,
to a
yeah.
point where we were as confident as we are in these other sports, I bet
Sure.
you we would be
Yeah.
diehard,
And I
you
think
know,
some things translate better to TV. I mean,
for sure.
like Canadians are always going to be crazy about their hockey, and some Americans embrace hockey, but
Mhm.
like basketball is just such an athletic sport where you've got guys who are 6'6" jumping in the
Mhm.
air and throwing this ball down, and it translates really well to just see the awe of how talented these guys are.
Yeah. And that's what I love about basketball. I don't think I've understood the level of athleticism that they're bringing, right? And that is almost the NFL and the NBA are probably the creme de la creme of just athletes. Like if you just want to look at like
Pure
the physical,
athletes, yeah.
yeah, like physical specimens, I'd say those are probably the two front runners where you're going to find them. But then you look at something where in the last couple of years I've gotten really into MMA and just die hard for it at the last, especially since every other sport shut down. It's just been ramped it up another level of I watch every fight going on wherever it is all the time. But I was thinking, you know, if you took a LeBron James and you could put him in like the octagon or train him up for 10 years, get a decade of
Well,
experience under
you
his
got it.
belt.
6'8", 260 pounds. He'd beat the living piss out of you.
Yeah.
Like John Jones, who? How big is John Jones?
He's like I think he's 6'6", but he's skinny, right? He's only two,
Well, that's what
you
I'm
know,
saying.
maybe walks around at 230. He could game, but that's the thing about John Jones. He has that. What are his brothers in?
Football,
Yeah,
yeah,
NFL, right? And they're great, and they're studs in the
and they're
NFL.
studs, yeah.
And
Well,
then
I
you look,
mean, tell me this: like you get ahead, you give LeBron a head kick and like a jab
yeah,
and a takedown defense. I don't think he's losing. Like
no,
who's he losing
exactly.
to?
Maybe like Francis Ngannou, just because he has that crazy power that it doesn't matter what kind of specimens on the other side, you can go down on either side, right? I think that's the only, but that takes all the other skills out of the game, right? That's, I think, the only chance he has, right? Or maybe depending on how much takedown defense you gave the guy, right? Because you could have a wrestler specialist that could take him out, right? If it was that level, if it was like a Cain Velasquez in his prime, might be able to, but that's
Well,
exactly the point. But I think we don't know. And that's what I think is so unfortunate about MMA right now is it's still growing, and it's not unfortunate. It's just the place that it is. It started in 93. I think UFC 1 was 1993. So it's only got 27 years of of growth. Whereas you look at the NBA or the NFL and it's got 100 years behind it, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to get to that point, but we're not paying the guys. It's not grown to a spot where you're bringing that high tier talent. If you have a specimen that's 14 years old and is, already 6'2" and 230 and a stud athlete, they're going to go towards probably, football, or if they're super tall, probably basketball, because that's where the money's at this point. But I think as we see that change, we're going to see a little, and also it's a very different sport in that
I think,
it takes something else.
I think also too, like, I think parents are just more inclined to put their kids in a sport like basketball or something a little bit less risky than like I don't know. I probably would never put my kid in like boxing or that because of the risk of, you can kind of get your same values from it, playing something a little bit safer, and I think kind of football is trending in that way where, parents are starting to say, like, is it worth it? You know what I mean? Like those who are in it to, make it big, like you've got like a 1 in a million chance of making a career out of something. Like it's tough to say. And just MMA, I mean, it's all the pounding that those guys take, right? And those guys are some sort of psychopaths, man, because they got to train for months and months, and they might be in there for 10 seconds and get their bell rung and be stiffened up on the canvas. And that's it. They got to think about that for another 3 months training.
At least. And that's the thing, I think, that makes my argument about the money kind of go away, because you're right. Of any sport, it's that one that doesn't matter how much money you need, that extra special gear. You could be paid $1 billion, but if you don't have that in you to make that walk to that cage, that's what they always talk about, that, you're going in there to be locked in a cage with another guy to just try and hurt each other, right? That's never sports. There's injuries, but that's always a part of it, right? Where in fighting, you need another part of you to make you want to take that step in there and to have that inside. It's just something that not everybody has inside. That's probably the difference, more so than LeBron James with the money. It's maybe LeBron James is that specimen athlete, and maybe he does have that killer instinct, but who knows, right? You never know until you get in there. And that's what weeds out a lot of people. But I think an argument to go on the other side of what you were saying, as a young kid, I think there's a middle ground that people are starting to see more. It's jujitsu, because you can put a kid into jujitsu at, 10 years old, 6 years old.
Rex Kwon Do.
There you go. You
snap the wrist, walk away. That's all you got to do, Nick. Head body, head body, head body, head body.
Well, I don't got to tell you, you're an expert, clearly. But I think that's I think that's a huge piece of these kids. You put them in there, it's low contact, right? You might get an injury, you might bonk heads or something, but for the most part, you're not trying. And at a young age, you don't have the physical force to, tear somebody's arm off or do one of those things, but you learn it. You gain all the confidence of being able to defend yourself. You learn honor. I think there's so many things that go into it. I think it's a great, brilliant sport. And then at a certain age, if you start jiu-jitsu at 10, you do it till 14, then maybe there's a kickboxing class, you just experiment. And that's where you can kind of find if you have that killer instinct, where the majority still, when you hear of the UFC fighters, and it's starting to change, because you see these kids that are now coming up, like a Sage Northcutt or Sugar Sean O'Malley, who've done this from a young age. Now they started at 14, where it's not just, back in 93, it was these people that were either a wrestler for 35 years and just, there's this UFC thing now, I'm going to try it, or there's these people that were a kickboxer to a certain point. Now you're starting to see the evolution of these young kids that have trained everything, right? They started jiu-jitsu at 6, and then they started kickboxing at 10. They were doing everything, putting it all together. They're not just wrestlers. They're not just anything. They're starting to come up. And I think that's going to be the next wave of these kids that are not just, you see the wave of what's right now. It's mainly wrestlers that went through their whole wrestling career and needed an outlet because there's not much money in it, and they changed that. And something about the grind of wrestling, it's such a grueling sport. You need it's weight cutting.
It's such a low reward sport too. There's no money in 100%. That, right?
Yeah, but that's almost what martial arts is. It's for more than the money, right? We're almost, of all the sports, if you could rank how much money factors into it, which is so funny, because at the end of the day, if you want to be professional, it's prize fighting. Right.
Exactly.
It's all about the money. That's all it should be. But all these people that are really successful, and the ones that are most successful, maybe other than like Conor McGregor, who came in talking about the money, but even him, deep down, they're true martial artists. The ones that are really excited about it, they would do it they have that killer instinct. They're in there to do it because it's their life's work. They want to be the greatest, right? And the money comes with that. And I think that's with all things. That's what you have to go for. But I think you don't see it in other sports because the money's there. If you're Conor McDavid, you're going to get the money regardless,
Yeah.
Even if I think even still, to be that great, you still have to. Money isn't what motivates him. He wants to be the best in the world. That's what it is. But you just don't see that because
Yeah, but
not only is he trying to be the best in the world, he's getting paid like it. Whereas the
he's not,
UFC, you
but
don't see that.
he's not signing that deal for anything less than the highest paid player in the world.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And
So
I
you
guess
know
that
what I
is
mean?
yeah.
It's such a hockey thing where they're so unwilling to come out and say, like, it's always, you just look at the interview, like they have it's a cookie cutter interview.
Yeah.
You say what you want, you praise the team, it's a team effort, and then you kind of, if if the interviewee is praising you, you kind of pass that off and you kind of say, oh,
Yeah.
the boys were
You never
picking me
say
up,
anything.
we
Yeah.
got it done tonight, we really dug in. When you look at kind of like a basketball interview
Mhm.
or even like a football interview, it's so much more individual individualistic in
Yeah.
that they love to praise themselves and they love to talk about, well, I should be the highest paid player in the league.
Mhm.
Where in hockey, you don't really see that.
Yeah, and what I love all the time is the closeness between the NBA and the and the NHL playoffs, and how they award the be all end all trophy for both sports, the Larry O'Brien and the Stanley Cup, within a couple weeks of each other every year usually, and you can see the speeches by the captains and the main players of both sports and how they talk about it. And like you say, when it's hockey, the team was great, the goalies did, it's never about yourself, it's always about everyone else. And when the trophy comes, it goes to the captain of the team, gets passed around, the coaches go last. But then you watch basketball where, like you say, it's a lot of me. There is, and I think it's changing now because I think they've gotten called on it in the last couple of years, and I think they are starting to maybe change it around to more
Yeah,
of an
but
NHL mindset.
there's so many goddamn divas in the NBA. It
Yeah,
drives me nuts. Like
yeah,
that was the great thing about Kawhi, right? He just went out and did his
hmm
business.
love
He's
it.
a quiet guy, and he
Yep.
just got it done. At the end of the day, he
Yeah.
got it done. But you just look at other guys, man, and it's just a show. Like on Instagram, they gotta be doing their thing. They're always just kind of flexing on us as
hmm
NBAers, which is
Yeah.
fine. But it's just, I don't know. It's a different kind of approach. It's more of their brand rather than the team's brand.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of casual fans in the NBA are kind of attached to a player.
hmm
Um, Whereas I think there's more, at least in Canada, it seems that way, that there's more, you'll ride and die with your team no matter what.
Yeah.
You know what I
Oh,
mean?
I love this. You just brought all the points together for the point I wanted to make. So I think that is a undersold part of that whole Kawhi story was not only was he this amazing specimen of a player that came in to the only Canadian team to bring them to a championship. That's a crazy story in its own, right? But then only one player could come in like that and connect with Canada and that is what Canada is. We love our basketball too. The Raptors get great support, but really deep down, we're more of that hockey side of just put your head down and do it. None of that diva stuff. Just it's all about the game, and that's what Kawhi, like no other player I've ever seen in the NBA. And maybe this is just my own ignorance in the NBA, and you would know more than I would. But I've never seen anyone like that in the NBA that is that much just head down, grinded, doesn't want any of the accolades. It's just about winning. It's all about that Larry O'Brien at the end of the
Yeah.
day. And I don't know if it seems like he's a unknown quantity to the whole NBA and to the sports world almost. He seems like this new thing we've never seen before. But I think it doesn't match up with how much of this one only only Kawhi could have come in and grabbed Canada's love like that because any other player wouldn't have had that. I don't think. I think we really connected with
I
what he was
I
about.
think we just generally appreciated what his mindset was, and I think
Yeah.
we all knew by bringing him in, we knew that the goal was, okay, we might get him for 1 year, but we're all in on this year kind of thing.
Yeah.
And obviously it paid off, and they definitely got a few bounces. When you look back at that championship
Yeah.
run when they were airing
The
all the games,
injuries. Yeah.
and like the bounce to go in against Philly in Game 7, that was insane, man.
Oh,
I was
I
sitting
get
there
chills thinking
I was
about it.
sitting there and watching that game, and I was streaming it online for free, and the only
Yeah.
feed we could get was like the camera above the basket. So there was
Oh,
no commentary. There was just the clock, the game clock, the score, and so it was only above one basket. So it was on the basket that Kawhi hit a shot on. So when Toronto was on defense, we were watching from the other end of the court. And then when he
oh,
shot that ball, me and my roommate were like, holy shit, did that go in? Like we weren't really sure. And then like the
yeah.
cheer goes and it's like, hmm, like holy shit.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, no,
Well,
they definitely
sorry.
brought. I mean, the Raptors are always that team they were good, but they were never good enough, and like they never really had a chance of beating LeBron, right? They always ran into
Right.
LeBron and lost, and I think
Yeah.
he kind of just brought that recognition that it's not really, it's kind of turning into more as a destination franchise, I think now.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure that they're going to get Giannis in after next season, and
You
I think
think?
that's I'm willing to bet some money on that.
Yeah.
Because him and Masai have a pretty good relationship,
Right.
right?
Right.
And they're both like originally from Africa, and so I think like I think that's almost a given. I'd be willing to say,
Can
and
you imagine?
and that just brings. I mean, they sign him for 5 years, and you've got a contender for 5 years, right? And I think
For
that
sure.
Kawhi kind of opened up that Toronto's like a big time city,
For
and
sure.
so people are willing to American stars are willing to go there, and I
Mm.
think, I mean, it helps that Giannis is an American, so he's not necessarily drawn to his hometown or something like that, but
Right.
it just shows that like the management they have in place, you can win there.
Mhm.
You know what I
And I
mean?
think that was huge, and just to show the response that I don't think they ever got to see. Like, it was always known that, Toronto is the only team in Canada, and that you're going to get support. It's not You're not playing for a city, you're playing for a country. But I don't think that was ever fully shown on the grand stage like that, of how much we love Kawhi and how much everyone gave to him. And I think one of the biggest things that spoke to it was how okay everyone was with him going to the Clippers after. Everyone understood what he came in for. We gave him all that love, but there was no burning jerseys or none of that crap. It was just, we thank you for what you did. And I think that goes to show, and all those restaurants that were giving away free food and all these things, just to show how much if you want to come and embrace us, we'll bring you in with open arms. And I think that I
I
hadn't
mean,
put that together that we might get Giannis, but
to be fair though, I think if you lose, if you don't win the championship, there's a different approach, right?
yeah. Well,
I,
you know more about the Toronto media with the NHL than anybody else, probably.
oh my God, man, it is such a sideshow. Like they're doing hits on Nazem Kadri's cat, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, no one cares, but it's because it's the Leafs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but to be fair, like if you're winning in Toronto, I don't think there's a better city to be winning in, right? If you're
No.
winning and you're running that city, like think about Austin Matthews, the damage that guy must do.
Oh,
Oh my God, man. When
it's
you're
devastation.
out there ripping home 40 goals your rookie year,
Yeah.
like you know what I mean? Like imagine the Connor McDaddy there in if he got drafted by the Leafs. Could you
Oh,
imagine the damage he would do?
you'd have to repair the
Be
city every
second
year.
to none. It'd be Derek Jeter-esque.
The Canadian
The,
Jeter.
the bi- he'd be a biracial angel.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's so funny. No, yeah, I think you're right on the money with that. And I think one thing that I don't think I ever realized what the kind of hockey media in Canada does to those players until I started listening to the Spit and Chicklets podcast with Whitney on there, him talking about his time in Edmonton and how brutal the Edmonton media was on him, and he was going through injuries and stuff. And just to hear the human interest side of that story, when all you ever hear is just hopping on him. And I've hopped on, oh, this Oiler sucks, that Oiler sucks, Jujar Kara's had a terrible year, and I've jumped on, but I try not to do that as much as here, because you just get to hear this poor guy, and he wanted to be great. He wanted, to bring Edmonton the cup just as much as anybody else, and he was going through all that. But you don't see that from that side of the table. And I think just that podcast alone has opened up my eyes, and I think a lot of people's eyes, just to a lot more of what the NHL really is behind
Yeah,
the scenes, and these personalities and what they're going through, right? Because
for
I
sure.
always used to be very confused, and I understood this on one level. It seemed pretty obvious for NHL between playoff hockey and regular season hockey. It's almost not even the same sport, really.
Yeah,
Different rule set, different kind of grind. And it always kind of occurred to me, it seems like everyone trying to get into the playoffs. You think you see it in the last maybe week or so of the regular season, they'll amp it up to that intensity to get in if they're close. But
exactly. If
I
a
was
team,
thinking,
there's teams that are coasting in because they're in, they're coasting
Mhm.
out because they're out, or there's teams like kind of on that bubble who are grinding hard, and then
Right.
you got to just flip a switch. Once you get in, you're in, right?
Yeah. But that was always something I thought of. Well, how can you even be out, because you can clearly show that the level that you can bring is so much greater than what is being showed on a night to night basis. But then to hear actual NHL players talk about the toll it takes to try and play that playoff, it's impossible. You can't play all 82 games at that speed. Your body wouldn't come with you. You'd get 6 games into it and you'd be hooped. And I don't think I ever realized. I mean, I realized it, and it was obviously the right answer. You can't play at that intensity, but until you hear the actual people going through that kind of thing, the toll that it kind of takes, not just physical but mental, and to be in that state of everything on the line every night for that long. Just the NHL playoffs, it's a long grind itself, but you think you want to tack on another 3 weeks to that and think you're going to come into the playoffs against,
Yeah.
you grind in as the 8th seed and come in against the number 1 seed, like you said, that got to coast in. There's not even a chance. You're almost doing more detriment to your team in trying to, and probably injuring or hurting guys that you'd want to good to go next year in just a off bid attempt to grind your way in and get stomped by the first seed, right?
Well, you just look at like the past champions, and you don't see it in any other sport where, like in the NBA, the 8th seed has only won a series like a couple times, has only upset the number one. I think it's only happened once that the 8th
Really?
seed has beat the number 1 seed. I think
Wow.
the Golden State Warriors beat the Dallas Mavericks in like early 2000s. Where
Right.
in hockey, you have multiple teams that are the 8th seed that have won the Stanley Cup. You have teams
Mhm.
like 5, 6, 7 teams that have won, right? And it just shows that it's so much more than just like the best team doesn't always win. It's such a combination of you got to be healthy, you've got to be playing really good hockey, and you've got to get bounces, man. Because you get in the best of 7, and you hit the post in one end, and they come down and score the OT winner, and that's it, right? And so,
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of have to. You just got to. The stars have to align in the NHL. You've got to have a
Mhm.
hot goalie. If you have a shite goalie, you're not winning a series. If you've
No.
got, if your best player goes down in game 1, or if Nazem Kadri has to bury a guy from behind or cross-check him in the face,
Every year.
then you lose a good player and stuff like that happens. But who do you think's going to come away with it
Ooh,
this year?
I don't know. I honestly think St. Louis has a real good shot at repeating. They looked unstoppable. Well, not unstoppable, but they looked pretty damn good without Tarasenko all year. Now he's going to come back all of a sudden.
Well, that's the thing, right? This is going to be the healthiest playoffs there ever has been, right? Like the
Yeah.
Leafs were going into this, going down the stretch. The Leafs were kind of going to match up with Tampa Bay in the first round, and
Mhm.
Stamkos was most likely going to be hurt that series. And I'm thinking, okay, like you take away Stamkos, I still think Tampa's probably got the leg up with just overall talent, just on up
Mhm.
front and net. Like Vasilevsky's better than Anderson. The Leafs don't have a Victor Hedman. I
Right.
would argue the Leafs don't have a Ryan McDonough either on D. And then
Wow.
so
Yeah,
you
that'd be
kind of
huge.
and then so you talk about like, okay, up front you lose Stamkos. Okay, they still got Kucherov and Point, but like maybe we got a shot. Well, now Stamkos is going to be back healthy. The Leafs were a little banged up too, and they got some players back. You look at the guy like Tarasenko. So there's guys all over the league that would have been
Mhm.
out. Like a Jake Gensel for Pittsburgh, who
Yeah.
is like such a underrated player who rides shotgun with Sidney Crosby. Well,
Mhm.
now he's back, and it's like, well, why would you count out? Why would you think anyone in the East has a better chance at Pitt to win the cup? It's like, it's so hard to tell.
Yeah, and they have so much game time experience too of winning 3 cups in the last couple of years. Like that is so hard to bet against, but it makes it easier when a big player like that goes down. But then you see, everyone gets a refresh rate before you hop in, and now it's anybody's game, and I think that's so exciting. I think
Yeah,
having that ability to get that refresh is something we'll never see before, and I think people that are poo-pooing the league coming back and saying it's going to have an asterisk aren't fully understanding that
I think
it
there's zero asterisks. If anything, it's going to be harder to win. If anything, it's going to be
exactly.
harder to win because for
Yeah.
one, the only thing maybe is that you don't have that home ice advantage, so you're going to kind
Mhm.
of miss those. Like there's certain barns, right, that are hard to win in. Like winning a game
Right.
in Boston is as hard as it gets. And I'm going to say the same thing about Edmonton.
Chicago.
Like when Edmonton
Yeah.
was rolling in the playoffs a couple years ago, I thought they had one of the best home rinks. This is going to kill me to say too, but I think the home rink in hockey is the Bell Center in Montreal.
Yeah, I know. I've
And
heard that
I
from lots of
hate
players too.
I
I
hate
know, me
Montreal.
too.
But my
Uh,
God, like when that place is rocking, like I don't think there's a louder building. And
no.
so it's just there's gonna be that. But you think about all those playing teams, they gotta win an extra best of 5 series. Like it's not gonna be easier. The other teams that are starting in that round robin format, like they've have
Mhm.
no way to kind of gear up. Like those round robin games are not going to be more intense than
Right.
the actual series, the play-in series. So
Mhm.
there's gonna be kind of those teams that win are gonna have to have already worked out the kinks, and they're gonna be
For sure.
firing kind of full cylinders. And,
Mm-hmm.
like a team like Boston or Tampa or Colorado or St. Louis,
Mm-hmm.
like they're going to be, I don't know, they're going to be kind of, their feet won't really be wet. And then,
Yeah. I don't think that gets discussed enough. And that was one of my questions I actually had for you was, what do you think of that system they came up with? Because I know when it first happened, I was so just happy to see that hockey had a chance at coming back that I was so excited. I didn't even think of the consequences of, I think the Oilers were in a spot to make it anyways. So now they have to do a play-in where they would have made it. And I think Chase was a little upset. He's like, oh, that's kind of bullshit. But I wasn't even thinking of it. I was so happy. But I can see the argument that you can make. And I think that's a way bigger argument, not the one where, oh, we were already in a playoff spot, now we have to play this play-in, but exactly what you said. Now, if I'm one of those top teams and I have to come in cold against a team that just played competitive series at that intensity level, I think it's ridiculous to think that that's not a huge factor. And if I was one of those teams, I'd be way more upset about this.
I honestly for this current year, like how it's set
Yeah,
up, I think it's perfect. I
for
think
sure.
that
Gives us
I
more
think
hockey.
I think the 1-8 format might need a little bit of tweaking. I thought what might have been a cool thing to do would be like do 1-16. So you don't have to
Right.
necessarily keep it East versus West. You could have
Mhm.
done, Boston was the
Yeah.
number one seed. I don't know who would have been the 16 seed, maybe Chicago or
Montreal
Montreal.
or something.
Like
Yeah.
it's like I would have been fine if they did like a crossover. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like there's that potential to have like a Calgary Edmonton final or something. Just because
Yeah.
this year is such a write off, it's like why not do something ridiculous?
Go
Because
crazy.
if it doesn't work, who cares?
Yeah.
You're most likely going back to your old format next year. And I
Mhm.
kind of think that they're gonna get a taste for this and they're gonna expand the playoffs in some fashion. They'll have another play-in round. Maybe it's like 8 and 9 have a best of 3 series or something, and the winner
Yeah.
gets in. And which
And
I'm
I love that.
which I'm totally fine with because
Me too.
I love just like all on the line, like go balls to the walls and like grind to get into that last playoff spot.
Bigger storylines.
Some of the best baseball games that like ever happen are those like one on
Wild card games.
wild card games, like win or go home.
Yeah, I
Like
love that shit.
dig in and do it. Yeah, I love
Mhm.
it.
I've always said that. I said the more the better, and then that way you can do it where it's not an unfair advantage where there's a buy involved, because if you do it as a pre-plan, right, their hands are tied right now. You kind of have to do a couple buys just to make it work, to have enough teams in there like they did. And having said that, that's why I think it's fine. I think it's not perfect, but I think for what they were up against, they did a pretty good job with coming up against it. But like you say, if you did an 8-9 plan or 8 and 7, 8, 9, and 10 all have a little
Exactly,
bracket
like a mini
bracket
tournament or
plans.
something,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Well,
Something
like,
that goes on.
that's the thing, like, nothing gets the average sports fan hornier than, like, like a game 7, like, winner go move on, losers
Yeah.
out. Like, that's the greatest, you know what I mean? So just
Mhm.
make that a one-game play, and, like, teams will do that, and it gives just more juice to a fan base that
Yeah.
would otherwise be out, and it just generates revenue, so give it
Yeah.
to us, and it'd be awesome.
And even more so than that, you look at someone like baseball where in those wild cards, there's no there's a little bit, but not to even near extent what the NHL is between regular season and playoffs or play-ins, because you don't have that extra intensity level. There's nothing better than playoff hockey, in my opinion, in all the sports. I think that is the apex of what it is. And if you can give more of that, that kind of style, that is an even bigger interest. How can you have a wild card playing in something like baseball where it's going to be, like you say, exciting games because of that factor, but really for what the on field of what they're doing, they're not swinging any harder at that ball than they would be in a regular season, right? They're always kind of just
Yeah, there's that
the
could
rules of
yeah,
the game don't
it's
dictate
a
for
more
that.
composed game, whereas
Yeah.
hockey, it's like there's always another gear kind of, and
Exactly.
it kind
But
of
even NFL, like the wild card games, the difference, I mean, the storylines is what makes it exciting. And you have that with hockey too. You're always going to have the storylines. But I think that intensity level step up is what you don't ever see. I think the difference of adding in a wild card to something like the NHL compared to adding in a wild card to NFL or MLB, if they didn't have it, I know they already do. But I think that's a huge step that you're not even seeing. I don't think comparing that apples to apples is even a fair comparison, because I think there's a whole nother realm you're not even looking at of what the difference is of adding in more hockey, but more playoff hockey specifically, because that is a whole, like we said, that's a whole different sport than regular season.
yeah, and I think like one thing that hockey has too is there's so much more parity kind of between
Right.
teams,
Mhm.
whereas you get to like the NBA, like there's super teams and then there's just like teams
Mhm.
that are duds. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like teams that are just like openly tanking, and you get that in hockey a bit, but you get teams in the NBA that make the playoffs with a losing record. And like
Mhm.
you've got to be a solid team in the NHL. You've got to have, at least 95 points, give or take, to get in.
Mhm.
Where in other sports, it's just, and I think there's room. I think there's room in the NHL to add a couple more teams, because I think they'll still give you a quality product.
Yeah,
Whereas in
exactly. It's
other
not like it's going to be a terrible series between
Exactly, and it wouldn't shock you if that team, if the team that wins a play-in round, like, wins around, like, you know what
yeah,
I mean? Like, goes
exactly.
on and beats, like, it wouldn't shock me if someone upsets, Tampa, Boston, Washington in the first round, just because, like, upsets happen. Tampa got swept last year, and that's just
Yeah.
what makes the hockey playoffs,
Mhm.
NHL playoffs, so great, is that there's so much juice, and then you could be sitting on your couch for 5 hours in a double overtime game, and some fourth liner steps across the blue line and
Yeah.
rips one home, and it's just party time then, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, you don't see that anywhere else. I think that is one of the most spectacular things about it. The only thing that I find is starting to compare, and it's gets more and more so as I get deeper and deeper into the sport. But with MMA, I find myself when one of my favorite fighters coming up, my hands start sweating. I'm pouring sweat. I'm nervous. I'm getting so involved with it now that it's like watching playoff hockey. I'm as involved with some of these fighters that I am with like the Oilers. Like I go nuts. I almost want a list of the videos sometimes in my reactions when people win. I'm jumping all over the house just like I am when the Vikes had that play 2 years ago in the playoffs. I think maybe it was even
Diggs,
that wild card game. Yeah,
Diggs,
Diggs
yeah.
there, right? Where I went from full pouting mode. I was slamming something into the pan because I was going to cook. And Alyssa was still sitting on the couch, kind of watching the game. And she goes, look, look. And I turn and I saw that play, and just the ecstatic from going from being so mad and so throwing things around to just jumping around the house like a 4-year-old. Just ecstatic was just one of those swings that you never see. But I'm finding that now I'm doing that with MMA, which I always enjoyed and I was always a fan of, but never to this level. But now that I've gotten into the storylines and learning who these people are, and watching their journeys and where they get to, I think that's another untapped, and they're starting to do it. But I think the storylines that make hockey so amazing and the parody that makes those storylines possible is a huge aspect of the sport. But now you look at something like MMA, where almost every fighter, if you're willing to put in the time to understand their story, almost everyone has a wild storyline of their family and what
Yeah.
they've been through, because almost just what the sport brings, it's not those people like the LeBron James that were saw as a small child that they were going to be something special, and
Yeah, you were
Taylor,
a prospect your whole life, and it was always
exactly
you were a
where
budding star kinda thing.
where MMA is a lot of the complete opposite of that. You had a failed NFL career and you want to give it a try. Sure, you were in jail for a bit and you found this is the one outlet that you can kind of got your life on track. There, you got that. You have guys that would work in the gym but never really fought, but then they have a kid and it changes their lives and they need money, or the kid is sick and they need to make money for it, right? There's these storylines all over the place, and they're doing an all right job now with getting these stories out, but not to the level that they should, right? If they realize what they had in some of these stories and tried to promote them on the level that I think they could, it's going to explode. I think that's why we haven't seen, I think we're just seeing the beginning of what MMA is going to become as a sport. I think it's going to become, they would talk about the big four of the sports, NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. I think MMA is going to be that one that kind of slides right into there to be the fifth pretty soon, especially because of all this COVID
Well,
stuff shutting down these other sports and having it be the only game in town. I'm sure the
well,
numbers
yeah,
have been
like,
just through the roof.
I mean, I'm just a very, very casual fan. Like, I only watch,
Mhm.
if John Jones or Conor McGregor's fighting, like, I'll watch those fights. I'll watch
Yeah.
like a title fight that kind of like intrigues me. But when it comes to just like the average fight night, like, I've never watched more UFC in my life. And like, I'm almost starving for something else, because I'm just kind of getting
Yeah.
old of guys knocking each other out. I'm not the biggest MMA fan, but
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I agree. Like, and he's Dana White's done a great job of like promoting like the Fight Island and stuff. And I think like
Yeah.
that's getting people going too. Is like Fight Island. It's just like the idea of just an island
Yeah.
where people beat the shit out of each other. Like, is
Yeah.
insane.
Even though it's bullshit and it's not even a real island like they said it was, fuckers.
Well, what do you think? Do you think McGregor's retired, or what's the deal, or is this just another marketing
No,
ploy?
it's just another marketing ploy. And he even said so, right? Like right when he announced his latest retirement, he spoke to Ariel Helwani, who's probably the biggest MMA journalist out there. He's got breaks all the big stories, and that's who everyone goes to. And he pretty much said, it's more so a negotiation. He said 2020, I want to come in. I want to fight 3 times this year. I want to be active. You guys make it happen, right? I'm the big show. Make it happen.
Yeah.
And all these different things they don't want. Now they don't want him to fight without a crowd because the gate for a McGregor fight is
It's
huge.
huge. Yeah.
So they want to keep him on ice, but he said, no, I want 3 fights this year. This is bullshit. He was all talking about how he wanted to treat it like a regular sports season. Like, this is going to be my 2020 season. I said, 2020 season, I'm going to have 3 fights. All these things are going to make this much money. And then it all went out the window. So this is his only lever to pull, really, is just to retire, which we've seen him do it before. I just think it's going to be as soon as we can have crowds again, Dana White is going to come rolling up to his door and say, bring it on. Because Conor McGregor, at the end of the day, like we said, he's a mixed martial artist. Money is all the flash and that, but really deep down, that's what he wants to do. He wants to be the greatest. You can see it in flashes of what he does. He tries to pretend that money is a thing, but a guy like that will come back. I guarantee you he fights again.
And I think he's just kind of posturing to like pick his spot. He knows I think he understands what fight he wants, and he's just kind of waiting for it to line itself up, and then he's just going to jump all over that big payday, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly it. The stars are aligning. Justin Gaethje right now is on a huge run. He's a incredible prospect, and he's now getting the matchup with Khabib come September, I think, because I think Ramadan's going or something. So Khabib has to fast during sun up to sundown. It's hard to train. So I think that's kind of pushing things to maybe September. They're going to fight. And if by chance Justin Gaethje won, Conor McGregor matches up beautifully with Justin Gaethje. It'd be an amazing striking war, and I think McGregor knows he can win that one. Where I think he wants the fight with Khabib, but you just can't make a really good argument with all these, because that division right now is the best division in all of combat sports.
Like when they fought, man, Khabib he just wrestled him, took him down, and Conor couldn't do anything. So no, I agree, but I think Conor just brings so much juice to the MMA game that it's. I don't know. It's just his pre-fight promotion is so good, and just like the banter he has.
Yeah, and he changed the game. He changed the entire sport.
I love it. I love it because he's like got that hockey player banter, and he'll just like scream in your face and tell you you're an idiot, and I love it. It's like junior hockey banter in a UFC press conference.
And I think you're starting to see that come into just like we were talking kind of at the start of the podcast about how things are changing. It's 2020 and there's more. It's not just what you get on the news, right? It used to be also in that same vein. You would see whatever you saw on SportsCenter or in between the interviews. That was all you got. And it used to be such cookie cutter stuff. But now you're starting to see more personality and more of these young guys that are willing to, not all of them, right? You see your Connor McDavid's where he's kind of got the Crosby style going. He doesn't let a lot of his humor go and that kind of thing, keeps it all business. But I think with stuff like Spit and Chicklets and more long form podcasts and these guys doing their own thing, right? A couple of the Tampa Bay guys kind of doing their own little videos and stuff. I can't remember which player on it. He kind of goes around on the docks and does little talks with the other players because they all live on that same stretch of water there. Yeah, so they all hop on their Sea-Doos and go. There's all these different things and there's opportunities for these guys. You're not just pigeonholed, like you're going to get paid what you play to make hockey or get paid to play hockey. That's your set amount. This is your amount for your sponsorship, for your skates, for your hockey equipment. Maybe if you're a big guy, you have an opportunity to make money somewhere else where maybe you'll get like a clothing line if you're McDavid or something, right? But it's pretty pigeonholed to what you could make money on. But nowadays you're free to do whatever you want. If one of these players wants to start their own podcast, if they want to, do a video series, if they want to do all these other things, they have all these freedoms. I think you're going to really see it open up. And I think you're going to see the NHL watch the numbers react to that because people love storylines. I think that's why MMA doesn't have that. Like you said, if you're a casual fan, the sport itself is exciting, but it doesn't draw you in like it does. Whereas hockey, it's so exciting, it'll draw you in even if you don't have the storylines. And that's why they haven't indexed into it, because why would they have to, right? Exactly. Hockey is exciting enough on its own that you don't need a crazy storyline for the individual players. But once you add that dimension, you can explode. I think it's going to be which of these sports can index into it quick enough and see it. I think you're going to start to see also broadcast being able to as you start to add your own personality into it. I think there's going to be broadcast changes where you have different broadcast teams that have different flavors too. Maybe you have a little more R-rated ones that are allowed to swear and stuff. I think you're going to start to see that. I think you're going to see personality come into sports in a way that we never saw before.
I would love to have like multiple feeds for the NHL playoffs, and like let's say on TSN1 you've got the normal feed that has like blended in crowd noise for this cup run, and then on TSN2, for example, like you've got the fully mic'd up version where you can hear like someone call Marshawn a fucking idiot, and
Yeah.
no one cares, right? You know, you kind of, you know what you're signing up for,
Mhm.
and I just think it brings another element. I think though something like that is going to be really held off by the NHLPA, just because they're not going to let it happen, just because someone's going to say the wrong thing and it's going to get on mic and it's going to go on national TV, and then the NHL is going to have to do something, or, you know, like it would have to be a delayed feed.
Mhm. You'd think so, but here's my counter argument. They're already doing it for MMA. Joe Rogan has hundreds of thousands of people that watch when they don't have a big fight. He just has a couple of his buddies over in his thing, and they live stream it, so it has nothing to do with them. It's just his YouTube stream that goes up. He puts a little counter on, so they're not showing any of the content. They're just talking over it, not even the sounds on. It's just them commenting on it, and they put a little timer so you can keep in time with your TV, and they commentate over it. But now that that's on the internet, anybody has the freedom. Me and you could watch the next Leafs Oilers game on a feed, throw a little thing in the corner and not show anything and just talk over it and bullshit. And if people wanted to watch, they could. And I think that's what it's all it's going to take is the first couple guys with a little bit of following to do it. And it's going to take off from there. And I think every team's going to have their own. I think, the Leafs are going to have a couple guys, or maybe it's just the bigger markets that can play for it. But it doesn't matter. Even if a guy's passionate about it and only gets maybe, 200 people that watch it every time, but if they enjoy it, they can keep doing it. And I think you're going to see it grow from there. And then you're going to start to see it spread. And then if it's all it takes is for one to take off, right? Because right now they got Biz on the radio broadcast team for the Oats.
Yeah, for the Oats, yeah. But I mean,
So
who watches the Oats though? That's the thing.
who watches the Oats and who listens to a radio broadcast of the Oats even further?
Exactly. They probably got five people listen to that thing.
But now riddle me this, Fraser. So now you take him off the radio broadcast, you give him an online one through Spit and Chicklets, even where he does the Yotes games with, it could be someone different every time that just comes on, and doesn't even have to be actual play-by-play.
You got an alumni goon who's sitting there. Yeah,
100%. And now
I think that sells, man. Anything that Biz touches right now sells. So
100%. And that's why I think it's crazy that he's not already doing it. And I think it's great because I think that's something where I can see myself maybe wanting to do at some point, if this could take off to a point where I'd have enough people that'd be willing to listen just for Oilers and stuff, have the boys on and kind of do it. That's always something that I always kind of had in plan. I didn't really plan on talking about it on the podcast because then people are going to steal my ideas, but it seems so obvious to me that I feel like it's ridiculous that people aren't thinking of this other than just myself, like I feel like it's not like someone's going to run and steal it. No one's ever thought about this before. It's super obvious. The model's right there from what Joe Rogan does. And everyone's looking at him right now because he just signed a couple $100 million deal with Spotify, and everyone's going, holy shit, I didn't realize how big he was. Because people haven't.
What did he sign? Well, how much was it? It was like 10 years.
It's 3 years for just the rights to broadcast. So like he still owns all the clips, he still owns all the content, but they have the first rights to broadcast it for 3 years. Starting in September. He owns everything, and it's just what's public is 100 mil, but that's not even saying all the bonuses and stuff. And I think there's way more to it. I think that's just the public number. I think it's way more than that.
100 schmil.
Yeah. Just to start.
You got 100 schmil. What would you buy? What would be your first purchase?
The Oilers? What are they worth? What are they worth these days? Call of Kates?
Man.
Oh man,
McDavid money in 3 years. Are you kidding
I'll just
me?
buy McDavid, start my own league, and just watch him play in my backyard. Just watch him burn fucking sea cuts.
Get him in that. Get him playing for some rec league in Grand Prairie. You guys would run the league.
Domination.
You could have 14 Nick Von Walkerbarths out there and one Connor McDavid.
And we light it up. Oh no, but that's what I'm saying. But I think that's where I think this is all going to stem from, is because people are starting to lock into that. It's less so the money factor. I think it's what people that are savvy on the internet, they look at the numbers of like appearances and how many people watch it, and he's getting something like 10 to 20 times more viewers than the most popular TV shows and all these things, and people are starting to realize that. And then you take these guys that write a book, like there's a guy that came on maybe a couple months ago, and he'd written a book about Manson and how he went through all these LSD trials and how the CIA was very involved in it. And he wrote this book over 20 years, never got friction, always got fought along the way because people didn't want it out and stuff. All these lawsuits and barely made any money. He's in a bunch of debt, and he finally goes on there. And you can tell he didn't know who Joe Rogan was, and he just kind of talked about it. And he said, yeah, well, hopefully I heard you're pretty big, and I hope I can sell some copies. So every copy that he had printed was sold out. It was the best-selling book, right? And people are starting to see that this guy who went from, and in their stories every week of these people that are anonymous before, and they go on, and now people are starting to say, holy shit, this guy's got crazy reach. But now I think, and he was already smart, and he realized this years ago and started. He stopped putting his podcast out live and would hold it for a day. And if they talked about things like companies that were really good in a positive light, so he could invest in them and then put the podcast out and make the money on it. I think he's making way more money than anyone realizes. He's way smarter than anybody realizes and all these things. But I think that only goes so long where you can kind of keep that in his little bubble. He's only running it with a couple guys. And then people start to see, wow, he's making a lot of money. How can I? And they're going to start copying all the little things he does, like those things. And that's where I'm going to see the explosion out in, that kind of thing. I just can't see somebody make hundreds of millions of dollars doing something and people not to try and copy it. And I think it's amazing it hasn't happened yet. But I think the first person that could do it is someone like Biz that already has a following, already has it, is a huge star in that circle, and he could hop in right now and have it bang and be a huge star.
Yeah, I gotta piss.
Then, hey, me too.
All right, where are we going next?
All right. Well, first I just wanted to say that whose idea was it to let Baby Bladder FO have beers on the podcast? That was just a piss poor decision from the jump.
Oh my god, dude! Yeah,
I gotta hold your bladder in the best of times.
I've got a bladder of a squirrel, man. I always remember like doing roadies with the family, and like it was every 20 minutes, like, Dad, I gotta pee, and it's like, oh man, my siblings hated me. But you know what? You can't have everything, Nick. Like, there's always, you can't be this gorgeous. You can't be this dominant at life and not have, nature, really. You know what I mean? Like, there's no perfect human out there.
No, you're right. You nailed it right on the head. I couldn't describe it any better. So that kind of hair.
I gotta have a small bladder and I gotta piss 50 times a day. So be it.
Hey, I'll take it. I'll take it. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I don't even know what we were talking about before. Let's look at my list of questions. We've kind of gotten away from it. Oh, what's the craziest shit you learned in school so far? Learning wild shit?
The craziest shit I've learned in school. You mean like current school or like Cairo? At Life West.
Yeah.
All right. So surrounding the brain and the brainstem is this stuff called cerebral spinal fluid, right? And its kind of job is like it acts as a shock absorber, but it also acts as like delivering nutrients and removing waste from the brain and stuff. And so with the chiropractic adjustment, you help the cerebral spinal fluid actually move around the spine and the brain. And so so when you have spinal misalignment, and you get stagnant cerebral spinal fluid, you actually are like inhibiting your waste removal, your nutrient delivery, and so it actually you're cycling through that stuff like every couple days. You're getting like it's a complete replacement of that fluid, and so the longer, if you're what we call subluxation, was when you have misalignment in your spine and that it's affecting your nervous system. You actually are stopping, for one, the movement of it, and the movement is what creates the waste removal and nutrient supply. So when you're blocking off those channels and you're kind of infringing on the actual spine, you're stopping, for one, that the nutrients and the waste, and you're also stopping the body's ability to get rid of it. So when your body is constantly being when that segment is constantly misaligned, then you're just getting that stagnant CSF, and then you're not replacing that, and that's and that's literally what causes, what kind of gives life to your brain, your whole nervous system, right? And think about what the nervous system does. It's
also, isn't it the barrier between like your brain and spine and like the rest of the body's systems, between like having defense against viruses and things entering into your brain? That's the barrier too. So I would imagine if that's not moving around like it should be and it stagnates, that it could start to cross that barrier.
You should be replacing that every few days, and if you're having that for more, like say you're a week, and like it's like if you're subluxated, then things are not happening right into your nervous system. And think about all the power and impact that the nervous system coordinates everything, you know what I mean, from your sweat glands to your to your muscles, like to your movement. So it impairs everything. When your nervous system is impaired, everything is impaired.
So if you had that subluxation or whatever you called it, what would be like the first things I know it's everybody's different, biodiversity is crazy, but what would you guess would be the first things that you would notice like in your day-to-day life
Well,
from that?
just think about stuff that happens, right? You can have simple things from like when your like arm falls asleep and it's just like your
Yeah.
pins and needles. Okay, well you
Yeah.
can have like sensory defects. You can have things where like one like your quad muscles on one side is significantly weaker than your quad muscles on the other side. You might have things where you have organ dysfunction. Where
Holy
like
shit.
where you have like the shits. Maybe like you have the shits and you've had the shits your whole life and you just always think,
Maybe.
man, I just got a bad gut. Well, no, like maybe it's that segment where that spinal nerve is going straight to your colon or straight to your small intestine, large intestine, right? And it's like,
Right.
man, if that's not working, if there's an impairment on the message going to the organ, then maybe it's not
Right.
the organ itself. Maybe it's just somewhere along the way that message is getting stopped.
Right.
You know what I
Oh,
mean? So we
cool.
kind of one like a philosophy class we were in at school is kind of we take the approach of like the clothespin. So like when the clothespin is open, it's a circle, right? It's got a complete
Right.
circuit. So that's kind of like you can send a message down to something. Let's say you're trying to move your leg. You can send a message
Mm.
down to your leg and you move your leg, and then your leg will send a message back up to your nervous system saying, "Yes, I moved the leg. Now here's where the leg is." Because if
Mhm.
your eyes are closed and you move your arm, you know where your arm is still, right? That
Right.
proprioception. So you're always getting feedback from your joints, telling you where everything is in space.
Mhm.
So kind of what we look at in the subluxation is, well, you can send that message, but somewhere along the way, that message is being impaired either on the way there or on the way back. So when you open a clothespin, you might have one side of the circuit, but you're missing the other side. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So you can go
Yeah.
there, or you can't go there, but you can go back. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
fuck, I had a couple beers now, and it's starting to
Yeah, I
wear
know.
on
I
me.
should ask you the tough questions at the start. But one thing I was going to say, just in hearing that, and I'm sure you'll agree with this. I think what complicates that and makes it even tougher is, like you said, you when you move your arm, you know where it is in space, right? That spatial awareness, being aware of your body and being in touch with your body. It sounds super hippy dippy, but I think that is a huge thing that people have lost over the last couple decades, or
Well,
hundreds of years.
I think you just don't understand like how much is happening in your body just on the simplest of tasks, like of
Yeah.
just like being able to pick up something, or even just playing sports, like how much coordination comes into that,
Mhm.
and how much your nervous system plays a role in that
Mhm.
proprioception. And the
Right.
nervous system really is the only system that kind of touches every part of the body. You know what I mean? It
Right.
incorporates everything, and it controls everything. So
Mhm.
when you have dysfunction there, you have the potential for dysfunction everywhere.
Yeah. But where I was going with that a little bit too is I just think, wearing clothing, wearing shoes, the sedentary lifestyle that we're moving towards, right? People still lots of people still work out, so it's not everybody, but even then working out isn't the same as what we were designed to do, was move our body every day, hunt and gather every day, moving body, be in touch with all these things. And because you might use your body a lot, if you work out 2 hours a day, you might be in the top percentile of how much you use your body. But really, when you compare it to what we were designed for, it's still minimal compared to that. So we're so out of touch with what our bodies are doing that you don't even understand when you're not getting that. If you were super in touch with your body, you would realize it way sooner. If that connection, like you said, if you had some of that sublimation or whatever, you would realize the connections aren't working like they should be. But we're so out of touch that we don't realize that. And I think that is a big piece. And just talking to my sister on the physio side about that, I think that is a huge piece that we're not picking up. And I think that you're having to fight against, whether you're doing chiro, physio, just regular MD stuff. You have to realize that people are that out of touch with their bodies. And you know, put things in place to help them realize it. And I think where I realized this the other day was watching some of those, those rock climbers and stuff that can do those crazy things. They'll grab like two rocks, put their feet out to the side and do like push-ups horizontally away from
Yeah,
the
those
wall. And they're
techniques.
so like, it's not, but I think what I realized with that, I was watching this, one of those girls on Instagram that does that stuff. And then she was doing all these crazy like lifts where just lifting herself off her body, off the ground onto her hands and lifting her feet, curling them back over her head and all that. And not only is it the physical specimen of what your body's doing and the physical shape that you're in, but to also be in touch with those
You're
muscles, because just to do
so in touch with every small movement, and you're
every
engaging
exactly every tiny, yeah, exactly, engaging every little
every little muscle that you need. to
Mhm.
optimize
Yeah,
that
and not
movement.
and not only are you using all those muscles like you said, but you're using them to different degrees. You're using all these little muscles, but you're not just, not like a like a bench press where you're just torquing out and using 100% just to get that thing out. No, if you did that, you'd right if you're trying to bring your legs around, doing a handstand, trying to bring your legs around to touch your face with all these contortionists do, stuff like that. If you went 100% full force with all those little muscles that you're controlling at the time, you'd go ass over tea kettle. You have to be able to use all those little muscles at exactly the right amount. I was just stunned by how much body awareness you can have, right? I think what we think is average of body awareness is probably like 20%. But it's so common that everybody thinks that. But what in reality of how in touch with people are. And I think that's where you see it in guys like breakdancers, jujitsu guys, right? Like those kind of things start to bring
Yeah.
it in. They start to have that body awareness. And I think that's what you see. And probably, I would imagine, I don't know if you've seen this yet, but I would imagine once you do start practicing on your own, you'll see the different levels of people that understand about, right? The difference of
Oh
having
yeah,
a high level athlete come
and
in
that's
and,
what's different about the average person to an athlete is an athlete can tell you like, okay, this is what doesn't work for me. I try to do this motion and I can't, or I'm trying to
yeah,
do this motion and something doesn't feel right. Whereas the average person is like, well, I heard it when I was doing this, and now it just hurts, and it hurts kind of all over. Where you
yeah,
talk to an athlete and it's like, okay, yeah, I can't do this, and it hurts here, and this is exactly where it hurts, and like this is how it hurts, and this is when it's worse, this is when it's
right.
better. Yeah, and there's so much more in touch with what their
Mhm.
body is and how their body works because they've just fine-tuned of how the mechanics of it keep it going.
Exactly. And I think that's where it's very easy. And I think everybody would almost have that understanding, just basically that athletes would have more of that. But I think there's another level to that if we don't understand just the body awareness. Cause I think even athletes to a point aren't even at that special level because I think we've seen the peak with some of those things where you see where people have extreme body control in that. I think even these high level athletes aren't. And I think it's more and more. And I think you start to see like, guys like MMA trainers start to get like movement coaches and stuff that go and do these weird things that are just getting you in touch with your body, of doing these weird steps and movements and stuff just to learn where you are in space, like you say, like that natural connection you have with your synapses to tell your body where your arms are in movement and what you're using at that time. I think we're
Exactly.
starting to see people index into that more, but I think that's a big gap. Say you have a doctor that's been practicing for 20 years, or a physio or a chiro, right? That doesn't understand. I think these are the new things that we're starting to realize that are really going to change the game going forward. Because if you're like yourself, where you go into your learning, you go into your school and you're learning with that understanding already fully intact, you're learning on a whole different level if you can understand that, right? And not just that, there's all these different levels of understanding of the body. And I think just as we go, not only are we moving forward on the technical basis, but our understanding of the more nuanced hippy dippy kind of sides of this is
Well,
also ties in with the hard science, right?
there's so much people just are only kind of worried about, or like the average person only realize like the unconscious mind, or sorry, the conscious mind, and like what our brain
Hmm.
is processing because we're thinking about it and we
Yeah.
know that we're processing that, but we don't know like, or sorry, the average person doesn't understand like how much your brain is actually working,
Hmm.
especially in movement. Like that's one of the biggest things that our body does is we're built to move. We're on
Yeah.
two legs to move. We stand upright to move. We evolved to become this being.
Hmm.
And so there's so much that our body is taking in that we just kind of cast away. Like if you're playing a sport and you're doing this, like you can see like a baseball player, he's going to go catch a fly ball. He's not looking at his glove to make sure his glove is in the right spot. He's looking at the
Right.
ball to see that he knows his hand is going to meet that ball in space. And
Yeah.
it's insane. It's insane of what we're capable of, and how
Hmm.
much like kind of our nervous system does. And
Yeah.
it's kind of, I don't know, I want to say it's, other than like the brain and concussions, it's kind of that forgotten system
Yeah,
to
exactly. And I think to another extent of what I was going to say is kind of what I said earlier was if you go back to like the cavemen, or not even that far, but just how we used to use our bodies and stuff, and just the vast difference when you compare 2020 to 1920 of how we're using our bodies and how in touch with our bodies we are. But then you look at that on our brain from the other side of it now, you go back to a caveman, how our brains evolved, there was so much less stimulus from time to time. Like there was times where you're hunting, you need to be fully switched on. There's that, but then there's all these downtimes where nowadays there's so much advertisement and things going on and TV show. There's always something going, and we don't ever stop. And that's where I've something that really has changed my life. And it sounds super hippie. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast already. I think I have, but meditation and just physically trying to shut your brain off just for 20 minutes at a time, and how much you get out of that is so incredible. And I always thought it was kind of one of those silly things, like maybe I'll try it, but then I started to hear like, man, all these successful people all talk about it, like to a T almost. They all talk about this meditation and starting to do it, and I started doing it, and it has been a game changer,
Well,
man. Like,
I mean, you do
oh,
you do kind of look like a Neanderthal, so it
well,
might
thank
help.
you. I mean,
A little bit
yeah,
less stimulus might
that
help.
nice brow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's exactly it. And now I'm finding at the start it was just kind of I felt better, and it was, a release, because there's certain things that your brain goes through in certain cycles, when you can bring it into that low, almost idle state that meditation brings you into, and it kind of refreshes and you feel so much better after. But then now that I've gotten halfway decent at it and I can kind of do it a little bit better, I find you're sitting there, all you're trying to do is not think thoughts, right? And you're just
Mhm.
trying to keep it. That's the basis of it. There's all these different mantras and breathing and stuff you can do, but the real basis of it all is you're trying not to think thoughts. But now I'm finding that the thoughts that are coming through are fucking great ideas.
Yeah.
Like if I sit there for 20 minutes on my little meditation pillow that I have, that's all flowery and girly, that I have right beside me, I could flip the camera around right now and show you. I come up with, there's so many ideas for this podcast, for work, for all these things where
Yeah.
you work all day and you're going. You try to sit there for 20 minutes, and maybe, let's say, on a good day, 10 minutes of that is keeping your brain relatively thoughtless. And the other 10 minutes is thoughts coming in that you don't realize quick enough to pull them out. But I'm finding that all these great ideas are popping up in that 20-minute space. And
Yeah.
I just realized, for now 26 years of my life, I've been just running full time all the time, and I'm the worst for it. As soon as I get out of my truck, if I go to work, if I'm doing a mindless task, I put music on so I have something going. As soon as I'm driving to my truck, I put a podcast on. As soon as I'm home from work, it's podcast on. I
Yeah.
always have things going, and I've never stopped it.
Yeah.
And I think
Exactly.
that is a huge piece of being in touch with your body, but then also getting in touch with your brain of what it needs, right?
Well,
Our bodies need more movement, and our brain needs more calm, with kind of
when you look at neurology itself, like why we need sleep is throughout the day we're building up scar tissue in our brain. And so like
right,
the brain cells, the microglia, they're going around and they're cleaning up that scar tissue when we sleep. But if we don't get
right.
like our 8 hours, then we have this excess scar tissue
Mhm.
on our brain. And then we have another day and we build that on top. And then we
Yeah.
don't get rid of all that and we get another day. And that's when you have like some
Sleep deficits and
and yeah, and some like degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and stuff that start to kick
Mhm,
in. It's because we have all this excess kind of junk in our brain that builds up, and then eventually that takes a toll, right?
mhm. Well, that disconnect I was talking about with our bodies and with our brains, I think even more so than anything, I think you nailed it right there, is sleep. I didn't realize how much sleep is important for us until, again, I'm a big Joe Rogan stan, but he had that sleep expert on a couple of years back, and I didn't realize just how important it was to. They say, I'd have to go rewatch it, but if anybody's listening, go watch that. You'll just Google sleep expert Joe Rogan and just listen to what he has to say. Just in the because it's hard to study sleep because it's such a random and everybody's different. It's hard to get really good data on it, but they can look at certain things like daylight savings, where when you lose an hour and gain an hour, they can see like a full percentage points drop in all cause mortality, which is, cancer, heart attack, stroke, those kind of things. Like a noticeable uptick around when everyone loses that hour of sleep, because sleep is so important, and when we gain that hour, it goes down. If that doesn't tell a story right there of how important sleep is to you, and just all the, like heart attack, stroke, all these things, all the things you said, I never realized how much 8 hours a day. And I now try to schedule my day. I try to be in bed by 8 every day, sleeping by 10 every day, so I can get up and I wake up at 6 in the morning, try and run every day at that time, because I realize how important it is. It's tough as shit to keep on it. I'm not perfect. I'm not an angel. I, mess it up every once in a while, but I try to, because I realize the importance of it and just the damage you're doing to your body. I think if people understood, it's one thing to know, everybody knows intuitively that sleep is important because you feel it. But if you can hear some hard stats of what it's really doing to your body, it really changes how you look at it. Or at least it did for me. I don't know if that does for everybody, but I think at least I would want everybody to understand that, because then they can make that choice. I'm fine with people if they understood how much sleep was important to them and kind of what they're doing to their body by not prioritizing sleep, and they understand it and they choose not to. I'm fine with that. That's fine. But I think that worries me for all these, billions of people walking around the world not realizing the importance of it and not prioritizing it, right? As long as you're doing it consciously, and that's your choice, I'm fine with it. But it scares me that so many people are unaware of these kind of things. There's so many important things like that, and certain, like knowing about that cerebral spinal fluid. These are key important things that just people don't realize, and we're so out of touch with our bodies that we're walking around not making educated decisions on it, right? I'm all for making bad decisions and running the, having a fun party and, crushing a 24 pack of beer and all that. I'm not saying no to that. I love that. That's what life's about from time to time, within moderation of doing that. But you have to do it understanding the risks that you're doing. If you're just doing it without knowing the risk, now that's just you're just playing the dangerous game at that point,
Yeah,
right?
just 1 sec here. I got 20 minutes.
Okay, well let's talk Lister and football then on the last little bit here.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sound good. Okay,
Wanna hear
so Lister was a big deal to me. For people who have actually followed along with the podcast and aren't just hopping in for this one. I think I speak about it mainly in the first one with Courtney, and then a little bit with Bill when we tried to talk about dodgeball and kind of explain that whole dog and pony show, what that is. But I just found that Lister was such a, coming from a place like Slave Lake where there was very set defined of what was cool, what was okay, what was, manly, and you had to stick with that pretty. And then I came to Lister and it was wide open, be whatever you want to be. You can still be that if you want. But I always thought of you as kind of, you always seem to know who you were. And, but I obviously met you, in the later years of our university career. I met you when we were both in first year, but we didn't know each other.
yeah.
And that was when you were, on the football team and that, and you lived in Lister, and then, how that all went down, but I didn't know you at that point. So I was just kind of curious, how did going to Lister, did you find it, what did you find of Lister going there, and how much did football play an impact, and how was that whole journey for you?
Yeah, I thought Lister was a riot, to be honest.
Yeah.
You throw together whatever, there was maybe 1,500,
Yeah. 15 to 1800 probably.
18, 19, 20-year-olds in one facility,
Yeah.
and you're kind of going to get what you expect. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it was. I mean, yeah, like you said, like we didn't meet until about third year, I want to say. I mean, we
Yeah.
knew each other, but you were just a Kelsey rat at that point.
Yeah.
So
You were a Henday dog.
exactly. So yeah, no, I think I was put in exactly where I needed to be on 5 Henday. We
Yep.
had a lot of duties, and we got into a lot of trouble, but
Oh yeah.
no, we had a great time. I have nothing but love for Lister. And yeah, the
So
football thing was it's interesting. Like we never had football here in Yellowknife, but I was always just something I was really passionate about. Like I always wanted to give it a go.
so where
So
did you play?
I never played high school football.
No way.
No,
How
and
did I just find that out now?
I don't know, man. You had a
That's fucking crazy.
podcast, so I had to tell you.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
Well, fuck.
no, and you know what? Even then, like I didn't tell guys on the team that I had never played football
No.
until like after I was done playing, just because it was like, man, I didn't want to seem like I didn't belong, or I didn't want to
Yeah.
seem, you know what I mean? So I just kind of kept that to myself, and I just like said
Wow.
like, yeah, like man, we played flag football in high school. Like we just fucked around kind of playing
Yeah.
that. And so, I contacted the head coach like in the summer after my grade 12 year, and I was like, "Hey man, like I want to come try out." And so he said, "Yeah, for sure." Like so I came down to camp and made the team, and kind of that was that. And I don't know, like football was always something that I really wanted to get into. And then
Didn't your dad play football or something?
yeah, he did. And it was just like, I don't know, growing up, it was always kind of my number one sport. Like watching the
Yeah.
Vikes was always my favorite thing. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I wanted to give it a go, and I did. And it was different though, man. It was a different experience just because, like, I would say like my best sport was hockey. And just
Right.
when you play hockey your whole life, it just kind of comes natural where you're not really
Mhm.
thinking about, you know what I mean? It's such a fluid game that it's not
Yeah.
like you can
You
kind
have
of
time
plan.
to think.
It's not like you're planning like in
Mhm.
football, there's a start and a stop to every play. And then you
Yeah.
kind of have a new plan for that next play. Like, you know what I mean? Like the previous play influences the play that you're gonna call, and kind
Mhm.
of that. But you got to have all this information on hand, like that.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to hear some random, like you'd hear like ace 21 flip to cobra or something, and you have to know like all these plays, and each
Yeah.
kind of part of the play call is telling like a different position group of like what you're doing, and you'd have
Yeah.
to know like everything right there. And so I
Holy
found it
fuck.
was so hard to just like it was less natural and more just like, okay, like there was such a like stress before the game, before the play of like, holy shit, like what do I got to do? Okay, I got to run this, I got to run
Yeah.
that, because I was a receiver. And it was a lot for sure. But
Yeah.
man, like it was great. Like I had a lot of fun playing, and I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Yeah. And not to mention that, but I didn't, I mean, I'm still kind of sitting here in shock because I didn't realize that. I thought you played football your whole life just because you always, it seemed, I kind of figured hockey was your number one sport just for playing because, that we grew up in Canada, but definitely for watching. You had always said from the first time I met you that you would give up seeing the Leafs ever win a cup and the Yankees winning another championship if you could ever see the Vikes win. And it always seemed like you had football as that number one sport. So I got to hear the story of your end of football, if we can put it that way. And I don't know if you want to talk about how kind of your career ended with that, but it always seemed so important to you. And when you had kind of told me that your dad played football and that you always used to watch football with your dad, and it seemed like it was a huge piece of your life. And then I never realized because I met you in third year. So in first year, it was lots of fun. Like we said, I lived in Kelsey Tower. It was kind of its own vibe. Henday had its own vibe. Henday was a little more of and it changes every year. Every year the towers have different vibes kind of, but for
Exactly, yeah.
most, they have a little bit of history that kind of runs through, and that's what they really tried to get rid of. But Henday was always kind of the shithead tower. Like they had the most fun probably, and they were the most individualistic, let's say, in how they had their fun. And Five Henday, it seemed that year to be the apex of all that fun and debauchery going around. And at the end of the year, how many people from Five Henday didn't make it to the end of the year without getting kicked out of Lister?
Oh man, I want to say, just off the top of my head, a guess. I want to say there was probably 6 or 7 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, I mean,
Some deservedly so.
some deservedly so, and some other parties, more innocent parties than others, for sure. But yeah, I mean, there were definitely some good rivalries, and we like to play pranks on other floors and ourselves.
Yeah.
It was kind of, no one was safe. I mean, there have been days when I've come home from a football workout and my whole room was upside down, and I was finding things upside down for like 3 more months. And then there'd be
Yeah.
times when someone would lean your door with a a garbage can full of water, and
Yeah.
you'd absolutely wreck everything in your room. I can't remember. There were 10 Henday did something to us,
Yeah.
and oh, they took the fire escape door off
Right off your wing.
right off our wing, and they hit it. So we went up to 10 Henday, and they were a double girls swing, single guys. So we went up to 10 Henday, and we took all of their stalls out of their bathroom.
I forgot about that.
And we threw them out the window from 10 Henday.
But that's not what you got kicked out for, no?
No.
No. So like we say, some of the it's called hell listing in Lister. If you got kicked out of Lister and you get put on what they call the hell list, so they don't let you even back inside the building.
Exactly.
Right. It's pretty much as far as they can punish you without kicking you out of university itself.
Exactly.
So there was definitely a lot of shenanigans going on within Henday Tower, within Five Henday, 10-day, a lot of that. And some of the hell listings were definitely deserved, but it kind of started a chain reaction where it seemed from an outsider perspective to be kind of turned into a witch hunt where they wanted to get as many of the people out as they
were
could.
just throwing them at anybody. So yeah, the actual time where I got I didn't actually get hell listed. I just got banned for a year, so I wasn't quite.
Right.
I didn't quite get life. I didn't get 25 to life,
No.
but I did get a slap on the PP.
Plea bargain.
Exactly. Yeah, I took the plea. No, I went down swinging. So we come back from a night out, and I have a friend in town, and so he's staying in my room. I sign him into Lister, like you got to sign in any outside visitors.
Right.
And we go back to our floor, and there's a group of my buddies chilling in the lounge. So my friend's hanging out with them, and I've got football camp starting the next day. So I'm going to bed. I'm like, all right, I'm going to bed. I'll see you in the morning. Like, come crash on my floor whenever you're ready, or sleep in the lounge. Like, I don't care, but like I'm out.
He's an adult, he'll figure it out.
Exactly. So I wake up the next day banging on my door with 2 like U of A peace officers, and that rat Trent. I don't even know what his last name was.
I can't remember it these days.
He went to Grant Mac. He was a pussy, and he gives me a letter, and they don't even listen to me. They give me the letter and they walk away. So like I have no clue what the hell's happening. Like I
You
it's
just woke
probably
up.
it's 9 in the morning, Saturday morning. I got practice in like probably I think it started at like 1 or something, and I just read this letter, and it's basically telling me that I have to have my things out in an hour out of my room. So I'm like, whoa, 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 like what the hell's happening? So I chase these guys
Right.
back down the hall, and I'm saying like, what are you guys talking about? Like I didn't do anything. And what it was there was a guy who took off like the push bar to like the stairwell in Henday Hall,
Mm-hmm.
and he just took it off. He either took it off our lounge or their lounge, and he had it in his room. And someone snitched on him, and he opened the door, and it was sitting on his floor. And he did the number one rule was snitch on your buddy, which I
Oh,
wasn't even involved in. He said that my friend helped him out, and it's like, oh man. So I was for one just getting kicked out of Lister,
yeah.
and then I went back and said, hey, I'm on the football team. I've got practice later today. Can I go to practice and get my stuff out after practice? I will be out of here tonight. And then from there, I shouldn't have even said anything, because from there they transferred that to the athletic director at the school, who then contacted the football coach, and something in the description must have been lost, because like when I talked to my coach, like he was saying like I did everything, like you did this, you did that, and it was like what the hell, like I was
Yeah.
asleep, I was being a good boy, I went to
Yeah.
bed early that night, like I was getting
Mm-hmm.
ready for practice, and but anyways, yeah, I was gone, and but I mean that's not my best football story. Like
No, definitely
the
not.
best football story I've had is I mean, I don't know if you've uh, well, Bill was on the podcast before me, right? So
Yeah.
you guys probably talked a little about All Stars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We went through it. Yeah. Well,
Okay,
all
yeah.
sorts for dodgeball. If anybody's maybe
So
pause now and try and find the spot in the Bill
yeah,
Pickering podcast. Oh,
so,
all stars. It was dodgeball if you need to know. But yeah, carry on.
so our second it was second semester with All Stars
Yeah.
around February or March
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. End of February. Reading week.
All Stars just an absolute shit show. You're getting drunk basically from Monday to Sunday.
Yep.
Um, and so in second semester of school, we had practices. We had 8 a.m. practices, workouts, or sorry, 6 a.m. workouts. And then we'd have a lift, like another lift sometime during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had, I think it was what would be the skills comp? Would that would be Monday? No?
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be Monday.
So Monday we had the skills comp, and I was in the hardest throw, and I'm a first year, and I'm just thinking like, oh man, like you got some heavy hitters with like Gilmore, and I
Yeah.
think Picard,
Kiefer.
Picard was in there, and Kiefer was in there, and it was like, oh man, I just don't let me come last. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
8 throwers. I'm just like a little dweeby first year. I'm like, just let me throw it in there fairly hard, and just let
Yeah.
me be
Yeah.
respectable. So I finished fourth, and I was pumped. I was like, that's great, man. Like I wasn't gonna throw harder than a couple of guys, but I didn't embarrass myself. So I remember sitting at Duke's at like, I don't know, 1:45, and I'm buckled, and I gotta be up in like 2.5 hours just to get down to the workout facility. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. So I get home, and there's a couple of my buddies are sitting in the lounge, and I'm coming off the elevator screaming, fourth place, fourth place, fourth place. And I get out of the elevator, and I'm screaming it, and mid scream of fourth place, I chundy all over the place. Like I paint the wall, and it's like, oh my God, like here we go. So I go to bed, I get up the next morning, and I think I'm feeling good. Like I think I'm okay. And I
Yeah.
get on the train. All the other Lister guys who are on the train are there, and I'm riding it down, and I'm like, okay, like I got this. Like I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then we started doing our workout. I mean, we started doing our warm up for the workout, and our whole team would do the same thing. Our strength and conditioning coach, he would kind of work us through it, and we were doing like these little bunny hops, and like that was when I realized like,
Uh-oh.
oh no, like you are in a bad spot right now. And I was like, man, like
Deep breathing.
I was like, holy shit, like I'm drunk. Like I'm still drunk right now. This is a Tuesday morning. I'm some plug. I'm
Yeah.
some first year plug on the football team. Like I cannot throw up in the middle of this workout because I might get kicked off the team on the
Yeah.
spot. So somehow I held it together. And I remember telling all like the Lister boys who were like still who were on the team saying like, man, like I'm still wasted. Like I
Yeah.
am still wasted. And I remember like a couple of guys saying like, holy shit, like because there were a couple other all-stars on the
Yeah.
football, and they're like, holy shit, like, did you go out last night? And I was like, yeah, like I got home at like 1:45 and I was buckled. And they were like, holy shit, you held it together because like we didn't notice. I'm sure I fucking reeked of booze and that goddamn, what was that beer called? AGD?
AGD,
Oh
baby.
my God.
Duke's Diner across the street from Lister. Suppose this is always the old wives' tale. I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently that tiny little donair shop that's across from Lister does the most distributing of AGD beer of any place in Alberta. Alberta Genuine Draft sells the most AGD out of Duke's Diner in
Oh
Edmonton.
my God. That
Could be
stuff is,
bullshit, but it sounds right.
I can't, like, that stuff is poison. And it's
Oh,
so funny.
delicious.
It's so
Nectar.
funny the current or what AGD cans are. Like you peel off the whole lid. It's not
Yeah,
just like a normal can where you punch in the little hole.
yeah.
Oh my God, man. What a disaster that place was. Whenever I'd come home and talk to my buddies about what Duke's was, and it's like
Yeah.
it's literally a donair shop that just gets turned into this greasy little dive bar at night,
Oh,
and all of Lister goes there. What a
get the
riot.
same music on the Duke box and get it going. It was a fun
Yeah.
packed to the absolute fire limit of whatever they allowed in. They'd be literally having people line outside counting to let people in, unless you knew somebody who could get in the back door allegedly. But I don't know. That was many years of fun, many years of fun. But I know you got to get going. But I just wanted, I wanted to make sure you told that story of the football because that's something that from the first time you told me that, I don't know if it was in third or fourth year, but I was so livid because something that always was very powerful to me since I was even in like grade two. My parents would tell me stories of this with my friends. I'm very protective of them. When I think they're mistreated, I get very angry, and I always used to get in trouble with teachers. I'd never get in trouble on my own, but if I ever felt they were disrespecting my friends or weren't giving them a fair shake, I'd get so angry. And I have had a thing with the U of A since you told me that story of how much bullshit that was and how they kicked you off the football team, and I think it's such bullshit. And every time I get letters for donations and stuff, I just say, fuck you guys. That if you can let anybody in if you can let an injustice happen like that to one of the nicest guys I've ever met, like, you would never hurt a fly. You get into some shenanigans, but always with a good heart. If anything, ever someone needed to be protected that needed it, it'd be FO. That's going to be the first one there. And I just thought that was such fucking bullshit. And I still think that's bullshit. And I think I would never do anything for that fucking university again until I see an apology to Fraser Oliver for the
To be
bullshit they put me through.
written.
In
I need a written
written.
apology.
Exactly. And I think if this podcast gets to the point that I know it's gonna, not when it does, because I'm pretty confident that and what I can do and what I can turn this into, I think you're gonna one day get that apology letter for FO,
All
and
right.
it's gonna be
Hey,
a glorious new day.
I appreciate you going on that crusade for me.
I know, because I know you don't give a fuck
And
about it
in
anymore.
all
I still
honesty,
do.
that football experience was great. Like I'm so happy I did it, but
Yeah.
leaving the team definitely opened up a lot of doors for me that I'm very happy it did, and I was able to kind of get back to hockey and play a little bit of junior hockey in Edmonton
A
and
couple of games with the Jaeger Bombs,
yeah,
University
so
Rec,
you
the
know what?
greatest team to ever grace the fan fleet.
Exactly. So, oh man, I have to tell one more story because this is a pretty
Okay,
good
let
one.
her go. Let her
Okay,
go.
so we're playing. We would have our junior hockey games every Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So like in some order, right? And we were playing kind of like down the stretch, and it was kind of a throwaway game. Like we weren't quite playoff time yet, but we were like kind of locked into our spot. So
Yeah.
I told our coach it was a Wednesday, and we were playing. We were playing Mackenzie Hall in Schaefer. We were playing. We were playing Cugsy's team, and like I knew like whatever even if I wasn't there, like our team was so good that year, we were gonna rinse Mackenzie Hall, no problem.
No
But
problem.
but but I told my coach, oh coach, like I've got a stats midterm at night. Like they scheduled it at night, and I was like,
Oh,
I know, man, like I can't make the game. And I was like, as soon as I finish the midterm, I'll come to the rink. So I played that Mackenzie game. We beat them, and then I ran to the rink, and it was like the start of the third period, and or it was just the end of the second period. And I go up to the coach, and I'm like, "Do you want me to dress?" And he's like, "Yeah, like I put you on the lineup. go get your gear on.
Might as well.
Oh man, it was 2-1 at that point, and like in the third period, we ran away, and it was like 6-1 or something finish.
Nice.
And all the boys were saying like, "Hey, FO, like thanks for coming, man. Like fucking rights." You know, like, and in my head, I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I was playing a fucking dodgeball game here.
You may be the only person to skip a junior hockey game to go play a game of dodgeball in the history
my
of
God.
hockey and dodgeball.
Oh.
But that is the exact summing up of what Lister was in a nutshell and what dodgeball was to everybody. And fuck, that was a good time. Man, we had fun.
But you know
Holy
what?
man.
Though? You know what though? They were always against us.
Always.
I was thinking it like, man, we won All Stars 2 years in a row, and we didn't have a single MVP. You believe that shit?
Hey, we were just
female male MVP. I can't believe it.
Yeah, hey, that's some bullshit right there. But if only we knew who ran that fucking LDL in those years, then we'd be able to go after him, right?
Yeah, whatever. Chumps.
I know. I couldn't look biased picking my own guys for the awards.
Oh, in all jest, so that was a wicked league, and we all had a good time, but yeah, they were always against us, man. They wouldn't even let Sean play the second year. He was too good.
I know he's too good. They just want to try and make some parity. Yeah, well, they're still against us. They're always going to be against us, but that's what happens, you know? God hates a coward. That's my favorite line from you I think I've ever taken, maybe slightly behind Holy Christmas, but God hates a coward. And, you know, even when they're all against us, we still rise up and we get shit done, don't we?
That's right.
Fucking right. So let's end her there. I'll let you run back to your girlfriend. I know she's got big plans for you tonight, it sounds like.
Hey, yeah, I'm not the boss in this house, I'll tell you that.
No, I know that. I
appreciate you having me on, and we'll do this again down the road.
Of course we will. We didn't even get to the start of it. We got a lot more to go from here.
All right, love you, brother.
All right, love you, brother. All right, there we have it. Episode 6 in the books. Hope you guys really liked it. I had a lot of fun catching up with my buddy there, and hopefully that shows people that it doesn't have to be so serious every time, and hope maybe everyone learned a little bit of something. Might have been a little Lister heavy at the start there, but nice to be able to finally talk some sports with somebody. I'm really excited to see sports come back. So, yeah, thanks for everyone for sticking around this long. And if, like I say every time, if you have anything to reach out with me, feel free on my Instagram, VonDubCast, or at the email, VonDubCast@gmail.com. Yeah, intro music, anything you can help out, any guest ideas. I'd love anything I can get my hands on. I'm just trying to use any resource available to me just to get better and better as fast as I can, so I can bring you guys a good product. So yeah, thanks once again, and I'll see you guys next week.